Study session, and we will begin with the conversation regarding K Street with Dave Mullen.
There's no. Here we go, right?
We're just throwing you in, Dave. It's a work session, so we're pretty easy here.
Sounds good. Okay. Okay. I got a million of them. They're all about that funny. Okay.
Very funny, Dave.
So tonight I wanted to give a brief update on the South State Street project that we've been working on for some time. And the timing is a little, we wanted to getting close to the end of preliminary design. So we're going to be talking to property owners and making some more noise on the project. So it was a good opportunity to address the council. Also, the last time we presented to the council, we had 5 questions that we asked council and staff that we wanted to get some guidance on. We've recently met with the bond council and we've resolved those 5 questions. So I was going to talk about the answer to the 5 questions and give a brief update. So that's what we have in store for this evening. I guess I already talked about the slide and what the purpose of the meeting is. So first up is just the update of the project. We're nearing completion of preliminary design, and how our lingo for preliminary design is everything is worked out up to the point of we know how much grading we're going to have to do, where the drainage outlets are, things of that nature that control the right of way that we have to buy, the permanent easement, the temporary easement, things of that nature. That's what we call the completion of preliminary design. We're very close to that. We're shooting for, it's always been on the schedule to have done in May. So we're getting very close to that. But again, we're going to start setting some public hearings. You'll be asked to do some things. So wanted to have an opportunity to address you in an informal meeting instead of going formally. This is the south end of the project. This is down by the dog park. as you know. And this is where we're also have some details to work out. This is where we'll introduce traffic calming treatment at the end of the project. So as travelers come from the gravel to the paved area, that we're going to introduce a traffic calming technique to try and reduce those speeds. There's a couple different alternatives, neither of which are shown because this isn't a design presentation meeting. This is just an update on the project. So we'll get into those alternatives that we're going to share at the public meeting in a little bit. So this again is the end of the project. And I was just going to go from south to north up the project. This is where we're showing again all the green lines are storm sewer. So there's a number of intakes and outlets. Also, due to the terrain topography, we're having some urban drainage facilities, the intakes and storm sewer, but we're also carrying a ditch for on the east side of the project. Again, there's a lot of offsite drainage that's coming at the roadway and currently runs parallel along the roadway now. To put that in a culvert would be very expensive. It would be a very, very big culvert you could walk through. And that's city-owned ground, so it makes a good deal of sense to have an open conveyance system there. So that's again, we're trying to be good stewards of the improvements. This is again the area that's already developed or developing. So we'll be matching in very nicely there. There won't be a lot of change to the elevation on the project as we go further north to the intersection of 12th Avenue. That is where we're actually lowering the profile of the road. That's pretty sharp there. So as vehicles would turn out of either the corn crib there or 12th, there's a little sight distance concerns. We're lower in that roadway there. In that area, we're still building an urban section. And we're able to utilize some of the existing drainage structures that the county put in. So again, we're also coordinated with development of Deer Creek. You can see pretty minor side road outside because we're mapping where we need to be. A little more work on 12th Avenue there, but again, we're fitting for a lot in most of the work inside the existing right of way. You can also see we're doing a little shift in alignment there. There's a little bit of a wiggle as we get further north. We start to see some more constraints where the topography challenges us, and we don't want to get into a cut situation where we really have to go all the way up to the top of the hill. And then similarly, we have the church at the kind of the far left of the screen. We kind of have to match that. That's pretty close to the roadway. We're kind of constrained there. That's kind of unfortunate. I'm going to back up if that's okay. Just it's right at the right edge of that sheet. That's a pretty tight little piece of the world. We got a major culvert that crosses there, and the church and the parking lot are right there. So we're really kind of threading the needle there. That's the reason for that little wiggle there. But again, we're trying to make us not as much impact as just barreling through there. So we're trying to be super careful. So at this part, the dark line on the west side of the roadway, that's where we're trying to maintain the existing creek that parallels South K Street, and we're switching from a curb and gutter section to a shoulder section. We talked about that, if you recall last time. That's helping us to, again, reduce the impact of the construction of the roadway on the adjacent property owners. Also, there's some environmental concerns. If we were to move that creek or relocate that ditch, we would have an amount of environmental permitting that we would have to do to relocate that stream. So we're again trying to reduce the impact of the project. come through here in again a nice kind of thread in the needle sort of way through this area. And as we get closer to the intersection with Highway 92, we're showing there we widen the intersection to accommodate a left turn lane at 92. So probably a through left and a right turn lane for the south approach, and then we're proposing to add a right turn lane on the west approach, so that Highway 92 traffic or Second Avenue will have a right turn lane get onto South K Street. So and that is the north end of the project. This is also the area where we the drainage way transitions from a ditch and storm sewer outlet to sort of a creek area. And this is where we may have a little permitting to do. We started this project a long time ago when we first looked at it. And we're under our third different definition of what the federal government describes as the waters of the US that's subject to permitting. So we're going to go back through that process. I think we're in we believe that we'll be able to possibly purchase credits and have a small mitigation there. We have not started that process at this point, because again, it's also in the transition of the drainage facility from what is clearly a roadside ditch into a drainage area, but we are imposing a fair amount of that drainage way. So that's one of the kind of those detailed challenges that we're working our way through. So that's kind of a rundown and where we are from a preliminary design standpoint. And then I would like to talk a little bit about the next steps that we're going to be taking, a little foreshadowing related to the public meeting. The next thing that the council will receive is a formal submittal of the assessment methodology. We're going to turn that in by the end of the month, which is why we're kind of before you informally now. So we're finishing up those details. We're looking at finishing the kind of the value engineering and the right-of-way design. We're shooting for May 13th for a completion on that. And then we'll follow that up with a public information meeting, which is different than a public hearing. Public information meeting, we will send out letters to all the affected property owners and post public notice. The council doesn't have to set that, since it's just an informational meeting. So that's a little more informal. Then after that meeting, we can start the right-of-way acquisition process. Again, there's most of the abutting properties will have some kind of temporary easement that will have to be acquired for the grading and the staging to do the project. We don't foresee much of any fee title right away, so we're not buying permanent right away. We may end up with a little bit along the highway, but most of the work should be covered in permanent easement. What we're anticipating at this point in time. So again, after that public hearing, there'll be a lot of discussion related to the assessment methodology as well as the project itself. And then we'll start that project with acquiring that right of way. So the next formal action that the council will take is the resolution of necessity. And the resolution of necessity is required by the assessment process. That's different than a regular resolution to go build a project. It takes 75% of the council to vote for it. And also at that meeting, we'll set up a assessment public hearing. Now I put these October dates on there. Those are the latest possible schedule. We can have that earlier. Again, depends a little bit on how the right-of-way acquisition process goes. If that's moving along, we can have that meeting where we have the resolution necessity and then set the public hearing for the assessment. So we'll have a public information meeting on the project. Then we'll have a separate public hearing set by the council that's on just the assessment part of the project. Then we'll, after that, then we'll advertise for the project. We'll have to go through the letting process, set the bid date, and then move towards constructing the project. Then the final assessments, or the actual bill that's due, doesn't come due for the assessments until after completion of the project. There has to be a certification of completion. Within 15 days of the completion of the project, the engineer has to file that certification of completion. And then within 30 days, the city has to file with the county all of the assessments. So there's quite a time before the bill comes due to the property owner. And again, once we set the preliminary assessment amount, that amount cannot go up. And it can go down. So if we get good prices, and it can have a competitive bid and the price for the paving is lower, then the assessments actually can go down. So that's kind of the good news about the assessment process, is that you do set an upper. So that's kind of the schedule that we're looking at. Again, I would anticipate that we would have that resolution of necessity and public hearing for the assessments earlier than October. We really kind of have to have it in October so that we can keep our bid letting and get those good bids in the fall for construction the following year, actually following 2 years, because again, this is a very big project. Any questions on that before I jump into the assessment part?
Do you want to wait till we go all the way through this before we ask questions? Because I had some questions back on the engineering side, but if we want to wait until the very end, that's up to you.
I'm here at your pleasure. So however you want to do it.
Go ahead if you want to, and then we'll just ask questions as we get done, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, if that's okay with everybody else.
Perfect. Okay, so special assessments. Again, what we talked about last time was this kind of unique process that we go through to go through the assessment process. Those are the bullets of what the council gets to decide. And last time in October, we left you with those 5 questions that we've since answered, and that's really kind of the fundamental thing of the meeting is to kind of share with where you are. First question is, what are we going to assess? What parts of the projects are we going to assess? Iowa code is pretty clear. There's a really long laundry list of what improvement means. What we've presented is what traditionally has been assessed by the city. The storm sewer sometimes has been assessed by the city. Working with staff and the feedback, that answer went from sometimes to no, we're not assessing any of the storm sewer part of this project. It is eligible for assessment, but this project will not be assessing it. Sidewalks there at the bottom, that is an accessible improvement. And if you recall, that was one of our 5 questions is, okay, we've decided that's appropriate for this corridor to have a 10-foot sidewalk on one side of the street. Assessing that, can we assess that separately, share it with both sides of the street, or how does that work? Well, we met with bond counsel. They reviewed the ordinance, and really we're sort of limited to how we can assess the sidewalks. We can't assess more than 5 feet of sidewalks, and it's really in a separate division because it's only accessible to those properties that abut the roadway. On the east side of the project, there are properties within the assessment district that do not abut the roadway. So those properties not be assessed for the sidewalk. So we kind of have to sort all of the different pieces and parts of the project, and we'll be assessing 3 different scenarios. This is a pretty complicated project that we've got a hold of. So that's the approach that we kind of have to take based on how the ordinances are written. Again, we're only assessing 5 foot standard width of sidewalk. only to those properties that the sidewalk abuts. Here's the rest of the list of the improvements that will not be assessed, and then the default fund is again is a 10% cost that is eligible for assessments that the city has traditionally assessed, so that will be included. As I mentioned, there'll be 3 separate divisions that will have to assess these in different ways, because some of the properties have don't have an abutting curb. So we have to take that curb out of the assessment cost. And that won't be spread. If we're not building it, we can't assess for it. So that will be taken out of those properties that abut the shoulder area. If you recall, that's on the east side or on the west side of the roadway at the north end of the project. There's a really long stretch there. And then we talked a little bit about the sidewalk. The assessment district, if you recall, we talked about is L a parallel street or not, even though it's a cul-de-sac. We looked long and hard, tried to find another project that had this situation. There really isn't. Couldn't find one. So we've kind of followed the rules, and we determined that to be a parallel street. So the assessment boundary is going to be reduced. The district is going to be reduced to halfway between K Street and that L Street as a parallel street. So that's why the assessment boundary is a little kind of unusual in that part of the project. And that was really the main question in terms of where the assessments or where the assessment district lands. And one of the things that is sort of interesting is that while the assessment boundary or the assessment district only goes out to 300 feet or halfway to the next parallel street, the assessment plat area includes all the property that is touched within that area. So you have to describe the property all the way around to the limits of the property, because that's what drives the value of the property. So that's why we're showing 2 lines. We say 300 feet, and then we show this line that's quarter mile out. Well, that's the end of the property, because the property is being assessed, not 300 feet of the property, if that makes any sense. And this legal description will be about 4 pages long. It'll be a complicated. So then we had a lot of discussion about the unique factors and the adjustments. And I call them adjustments. Our bond counsel is going to call them deficiencies, because that's where they land in the calculation of reducing the assessments. So we talked a lot about the present and future land use. There are a few parcels that are eligible for agricultural deferral. And that's basically in the code that if it's an agricultural use, you can defer those assessments until such time that the land close. And then that comes due. I believe that the deferral is a 10-year deferral. They can also request a petition and waiver, and why that's useful is if there is a parcel of land that wants to subdivide, they can subdivide that, and then they can waive notices and the hearing, so that if they subdivide it into 10 parcels or 15 parcels during the course of the project, we don't have to go back to the beginning and recalculate all the assessments, and then they can take the cost of the assessment and distribute it over the entire subdivision. And that's really petition and waiver is really the driver that starts an assessment project. And I think Iowa Avenue that we worked on a couple of years ago is a great example that there was a property owner that wanted to develop right now, and that paving wasn't in the CIP, but they wanted to do it right now, so they submitted the petition to do this project, and we'll waive all the other fees and help pay for it, and so we can get that going. So that's really the tool that they have to use that. I don't know that I anticipate any petition waivers on this particular project.
Dave, can I just ask about deferral, ag deferral? Thought that was, is that now 10 years? I thought it was 20 years.
It was 20, and I think that they can request 20, but they've been going, the last couple have been a 10-year deferral.
After that 20 or 10 years is up, whichever one, that they don't have to pay anything.
Correct.
I thought it was like the length of the bond is what I thought it was.
Yep. And it's tied to that's where the bond contract.
Okay.
15, it's tied to that.
But that decision, we make that decision, or is that decision made for us? I guess that's the question.
You make the decision on the length,
Okay,
but the property owner makes the decision whether to or not.
right. I get that. Yeah, yeah.
It is a lien. That's the other thing.
It is a lien on the property.
It is a lien, and one of the property owners on ag use property on Iowa Avenue elected to pay up front as to not have a lien on the property. So that's
So if it's a lien and they do sell it for development, they take that into account that it's a lien and it's just gonna get
they
paid.
have to
once it's
perfect the
developed.
lien, right, before they can
Right.
transact
They have to pay,
the
yeah.
property, they have to perfect the title, which means they have to pay off. It's the lien.
Okay,
And again, that's the other thing that petition waiver comes in handy, because then you don't have not a lien anymore, it's a separate agreement.
Well, that Iowa runs by Wilder. Just drew a blank. Sorry, if my mind is in. There's an ag deferral on the south side of that. That's probably just about up, I would say.
Pretty close, yeah. Not sure what the bond term was on that.
I don't either.
project.
I think it was probably 20 years.
And then the third bullet there is the development agreement. We would anticipate several of those on this project, where it's a large lot, single family use on fairly large lot. That would be a significant encumbrance to that property. And so the approach that we've taken before is offered those property owners the opportunity to enter into a development agreement where they would be pay an equivalent big lot, like 100 or 175 feet, I think was what we used on Iowa Avenue, or 200 feet, instead of the 500 feet that they front the property. And then the part of the agreement is that if it were to subdivide into properties, then the rest of the assessment bill would come due. So it's kind of a deferral, a development deferral. But if it's always going to be a single family residence use, then really the benefit of the project is one house. So that's why that seems like that's a fair deal, because the benefit is one house.
We also did that, I believe, on the north side of Euclid, did we not? A couple of those large properties, if I'm not mistaken.
A little different. It wasn't a development agreement. It was a little bit different. I think the development agreement is a little more two-sided. They have to agree to do that, and you still the city protects themselves so that landowner doesn't get a super duper good deal and then subdivide and not pay for their fair share of the lot, because they turn their property into six lots or something like that. So that's been a very effective and again fair approach to those types of uses. We also talk about the unique features. Really kind of landed on the three that we're going to pay a lot of attention to is the side street reduction, which is 30% reduction. Those are like the folks that live on 14th Street that have already kind of paid for the paving in front of their frontage. And so that the assessment is reduced by 30% for those folks that are on side streets. Similarly, we're looking at a 30% reduction for steep slopes. These are really the areas around the banks at the creek, which are kind of undevelopable. And so for that area, whatever the assessment is for that area of the slope, that will be reduced by 30%. And then similarly, the floodplain areas down at the south end of the project where the FEMA floodplain is unbuildable area based on policy. So that reduction is proposed at 100%. Where we ended up at. So those are the kind of the unique factors and adjustments. We also talked about the valuation committee. Valuation committees are really important because the council valuation that is used to calculate assessed value is different than the Warren County assessor's value. It is post project. A little different. It's like the project is all done. Now what's the value of the property? Which is a little different than a regular assessment, if you will. It was recommended by bond counsel that because we have a number of unique parcels on this project, that all of the properties should be viewed by the valuation. Our initial recommendation was just for the development part, just the open-ended parcels. But they recommended that we ask the committee's help in looking at all of the valuation of the project.
That's the group that we asked.
Correct. Yep.
Not council. It's outside people.
Yep, usually a mix of real estate agents and appraisers or things of that nature. But there'll be 32 or 33 parcels, so it's a fair amount of work. And I always put this slide in all of my assessment presentations. Special assessments need to be equitable, proportional, and reasonable, and need to follow rules, but take into account the uniqueness of each individual property. And oh boy, are they documented. We write down everything. We're going to talk to every one of the property owners and talk about the development potential and what their options are. And we'll have all of those conversations documented through the whole process. So that is kind of the summary. Here's the recap of the 5 questions that we asked the last time we were here and the answers that we came up with. And that is the end of the prepared remarks. We can move on now to whatever questions you have. If you want to go back earlier parts of the presentation, or Ben says he has about 45 minutes of stuff that he can go over. If we want to switch.
You know, you had some questions. You want to start with those?
Yeah, I guess kind of for the council too, but I guess how do we determine in the future when some parts of K Street start to develop more? We're going from it looks to me like half urban design, half rural / urban / whatever. So I guess I might have missed that, or I wasn't quite sure, but I just wonder, because we don't have curb and gutter on portion of the roadway, you know, are we doing the right thing for the future? I guess that's my question here, because, you know, who knows when that'll develop? It could develop 3 years after we pave the road, and now all of a sudden are we going back into curb and gutter?
Can I zoom?
Please do.
Yeah, I don't want to get anybody seasick. Go back to that. So this is the area of concern. And I'm right there with you. I don't want to build something and come back and have to change it.
It looks like it's very wooded and hilly, and that's where the draw is. Is that correct?
Right. That's where there's a significant drainage area there. After the, you know, and it's very, very, very deep. I mean, probably, I think it's over 30 feet deep. So if it were to develop, that, my imagination is that that would be sort of the back. Your
Yeah.
backyards would be the creek. And so that you'd have an access point at some point in there, and then, that might be an area where we curb the returns to try and control the drainage and not have but it will be, I think, difficult to permit any significant earthwork moves.
Right, and but I guess I'm just having trouble, I'm having difficulty viewing how this is gonna look, because it's gonna look as you're going down the road, especially if you go south, you're not gonna have any curb. Where does the curb and gutter start from the highway, or is there a curb and gutter?
Yes.
Down past the development there at Fairway?
Yeah. So right to the end of about halfway through, there's a fairly significant cross culvert that we're picking up. And that's really kind of adds a lot to that drainage area right at that point. So it'd be, what would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4, about 500, 600 feet south of 92 is where the curb would drop off. And then
But there would be curb on the west side.
curb on the west side.
Then do these, since we're on this corner of 92, do they get, since they're on an adjoining side street, well, I wouldn't say that's a street, but a major street, do they get a discount on their assessments?
Asked about that, and that's a highway, that's a state highway, so they're not eligible for the discount because state highways aren't assessed, whereas side streets.
So if I can go back then, so on the slide before this one, then that's where it starts. How many feet of non-curb and gutter do we have there? So then it is a pickup. Where does that curb and gutter pick up again?
So
On the west side,
let me see if I can, yeah, there we go. There.
right there.
And you can use your mouse to make it look like a pointer.
Okay, this is a mouse too?
No, you're actually using your touchpad. You can move a hand around.
Gotcha, okay. Yeah, so this is the transition.
Right.
Right at that entrance. And it's about 900 feet, 1,000 feet right at, I mean, it's a fairly long distance, but it's also, right now, it's very tree covered
Oh, sure, yeah, I know.
and
Pretty steep too,
yeah.
and private property.
Yeah, I guess it's just, I'm just
Is a,
vision how a road looks when you got curb and gutter on one side and a shoulder and a ditch on the other.
right, we're also looking at some of these, at least some of the areas that are unrecoverable slopes will have some cable guardrail protecting your vehicle there. So that's also part of our traffic calming vocabulary as well. So there'll be a vertical element as as a driver, you'll see a vertical element there.
That was something we kind of made the decision as a council your last night you were here.
Right.
I just
I'm
wanted
just having a hard time seeing.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very, the drainage area of that part of the stream makes it very difficult to move the stream from a permitting standpoint. And the other alternatives aren't very good either.
Right, yeah. I just know we get it all done. There was gonna be questions about, why didn't you put curb and gutter all the way down through there?
Can't win.
Yeah, I think it relates to the curve there. I mean, it relates to the.
No, I understand completely what you're saying. I just know that we're gonna get questions.
Yep. I don't.
Can you go back to the very south end then? I did that question there.
Up back or down back? Up is
There we go.
down the
Closer.
street, right?
All right, just go one more.
More.
I'm trying to, maybe Charlie can jump in here too, but the development preliminary plat that we did for that property west of the roadway there,
Yep.
is there gonna be an access point for that somewhere on the road now, or is that what that is right there? Close to 17th, or is that another?
Yeah.
That's just a driveway
It's
to.
here.
Sorry, I can't see. Oh, there it is. Okay.
it's about over here at the edge, because this is where the floodplain is along this creek.
Yeah, right.
And so that was part of the reasoning for moving the intersection of 17th this far, is to get a good spacing between
Sure.
that contemplated entrance. Because you really can't, you can't force an entrance in the floodplain. That doesn't do anybody any good. So I think the proposed entrance is up in this area. Is that about right, Charlie?
250 feet. That's what.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and obviously the river used to run where the trees are there in the dog park and up
Yep.
across that whole area there. So it's obviously a floodplain, but it's, I was just kind of curious where that other entrance to the roadway was. Okay. Can we get a link or printout, not necessarily your plans, but maybe those two, but also the sheets at the end there that outline your timeline and,
This presentation would be great if you could just send us. the
yeah, send a
presentation.
copy of it.
You know, I saw several taking pictures, so then at least we will have it all,
Yeah.
one place. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah, again, the timing isn't super perfect, but we wanted to get in front of you before we started mailing letters to the property owners and an update of where we're at.
Okay, so one other question I had then. Can we set payment options? We used to be able to do that, like a payment option, if you had a fairly large assessment, make payments over a period of time
I
or.
believe so. I believe there's a whole big section on that.
Pay it off all
Yeah, what is the time frame, Andy? Do you know?
10 years.
Years?
In front of that church, Dave, how many feet is the offset?
The offset from,
Where the road jogs back to the west?
how far did we shift it?
Yeah.
That's a great question. Looks like about 20 feet-ish. 15 to 20 feet. I'm just my calibrated eyeballs. I can get you a better dimension on that, but just how it.
Great. Questions?
You know, staff talked to IMU about, I know that they're talking about starting their solar field or starting some construction there. Are we working closely with them on that too? Then? Okay. So there's no interruption in your.
Nothing with the project. I know we're reviewing their site plan right now.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave.
Welcome.
On item number 2, discussion regarding upcoming agenda items from within the regular April 17th council agenda. Anything we want to talk about now, or we can? Well, we can. 15-minute break.
There you go.
Ready at 7.
Okay.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would you call the roll?
Councilmember Parker,
Present.
Goldie,
Here.
Rhoders, Teach, here, Richardson,
Present.
Mayor Erickson.
Present. Move on to item number 4, which is recognition of service for Heather Hewlin. Heather is back there. We'll read this and then we'll have you come up front. Whereas Heather Hewlin was elected as a city council member in 2019, whereas Councilwoman Hewlin office in January 2020. Whereas during the term in office, City Councilwoman Hewlin represented all residents of the city of Indianola. And whereas during her term in office, City Councilwoman Hewlin served the community in other roles, such as the city's representative on the Warren County Economic Development Community, SERPTA, and the Landfill Board. And whereas in addition to her city council duties, City Councilwoman Hewlin has long exhibited her love and commitment to the community by volunteering her services to a multitude of local organizations. And whereas the elected and appointed officials and staff of the city of Indianola will greatly miss her enthusiasm, professionalism, and support as a council member. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor of the city of Indianola, Iowa, that Councilwoman Hewlin's successful service to the community is recognized and appreciated. Passed and approved this 17th day of April. Heather, come forward. You can come up. Weird.
Here we go.
We should have taken out of the box to give Bob's custom trophies a little.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you. I'm gonna do a lot of walking. Right. On to item number 5, which is recognition of service of Sergeant Dwyer. See in the audience, we won't make you come up and stand while I read this all, but we'll probably come up afterwards. Sergeant Dwyer started with the Indianola Police Department in 1997. Sergeant Dwyer was injured in the line of duty on April 1st, 2023. Sergeant Dwyer was assisting in a pursuit that was initiated by the Des Moines Police Department. As the pursuit traveled south of Des Moines and approached Indianola, Sergeant Dwyer sprang into action, deploying the stop sticks. The suspects ran over the sticks at an estimated 90 miles per hour. Upon impact, the string wrapped around Scott's middle and ring finger and tore off the top thirds of his fingers. Sergeant Dwyer was immediately rushed to the hospital where immediate surgery was performed. Unfortunately, they were not able to successfully reattach his tips, but Sergeant Dwyer still came out with a positive attitude. Sergeant Dwyer returned to work on light duty, of course, 8 days later. And we thank you, Sergeant Dwyer, for your dedication and sacrifice for the citizens of Indianola. Give you a round of applause. Thank you. What a scary morning that must have been, right?
On April Fool's Day too.
Yeah, right. I didn't want to walk around again. I feel like
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for being. You, Sergeant Dwyer, and for our next special guest, which is K9 unit Kilo. Sounded like he was being a little feisty out there, so little puppy. So he gets kind of anxious, so calm and present. Hello.
Hi.
Good job, Kilo. All right, Kilo.
Before we start, so he's like really shy. So he's gonna tell me what he says and I'll tell it to you.
Okay. I will have you repeat after me for Kilo. I, Kilo. That's all right. We got some more to say, Kilo. I, Kilo, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my ability, discharge all the duties of the police canine of the city of Indianola, Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law.
Yeah, so that sounds fine.
Okay, good. He said he's bigger than him.
We have got to be the only city council in the state of Iowa that's ever sworn in a canine.
And it's got the paw print on it too.
That's right, I
It's
saw
official
that.
for Jackie.
So, yeah.
So thank you all for. He's got. Oh, and he's got. That's all right. It's your first time and he didn't remind you about that.
His grandma wants to put it on.
I love that.
Sit. Sit.
Why is that man with the camera by me?
He just wants to find the drugs. He's like, just let me do my job, guys. People. Oh, that is the best grandma. Boy.
Great pictures. The badge. One more time.
Gonna be in a privilege.
Me one more.
Thank you. Oscar. Well, here, we'd like to thank you for the entertainment on Friday night and the basketball game and not taking out any grandmas, so. All right, we will move on to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak should come to the lectern and state their name and address for the record. Seeing none, we will move on to item 8. I need a first and second motion to approve the consent. Actually, I'm sorry. Are there any items that anyone would like to pull from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to pull items F and G and item P.
B and
Item P.
can I get a first and second motion to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of item F, B, and P?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
I'm gonna read it.
Any highlights on here, Ben, with the exception of F, G, and P?
Sure, we have a renewal of refuse hauling for waste management. We have 3 liquor licenses. Special event, a summer kickoff for the library coming up. Home-based Iowa application for Bradley Thomas is on there. The pay application for the work project. A blessing for one of our police vehicles, 2 fire contracts for 2 of our adjacent townships. Approving and accepting a sanitary sewer easement. Excavation of a crossing encroachment agreement with MCI Communications LLC. We had a fantastic meeting last Monday with IMU, a joint board meeting with regard to all of our employee benefits, health insurance for the new year. That has been memorialized in a resolution that will be before you for your consideration on this consent agenda, as well as the Hometown Pride Committee amendment to their bylaws.
Any questions about any of that? Jackie, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Beach,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Schroeder.
Moving on to item F, can I get a first and second motion to approve the resolution approving change order number 1 and payment application number 1 for the Indian Oil Industrial Park plat project?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Steve, do you-
Well, I, again, as I indicated, this number of you in the week prior here, that I understand that we had some explanation on the project, but I'm mostly concerned about the change order with that at 24 some thousand dollars, I think 24, am I right on that? Charlie? Right, yeah.
4077.
And I understand that there was some areas opened up there, but I still have some trouble in looking at how we continue to pay change orders for things that I think in some cases should have been either engineered or done in a bid process and as it went through the documents and stuff and plans and specifications that should have been picked up. But I can't support this, but for the rest of you can.
When I maybe give, I don't know if you or Charlie, just a quick explanation of kind of what happened on that situation.
No. Sorry.
Sorry, Charlie, to just throw you in there.
Didn't know what I was doing up there. So, yeah, just some quick summary. We're just talking about the change order, not the payout portion of it
Yes.
on this one. So there was 2 things on this particular change order. Scoot it over, and I've got my in front of me here, so I just want to make sure I have those up.
You did a very good job explaining it.
Yeah, so, no, appreciate that. The first was for increased traffic control, which staff actually
Yes.
requested this. Really what happened out there, we knew we were gonna have 14th Street closed. We wanted to make sure that we were not inadvertently diverting traffic down North 9th Street, which we knew would be an issue if that happened. So we did ask for some increased traffic control in that area to make sure that the trucks that needed to get to the industrial park were using Iowa Avenue rather than some of the side streets. On the second one, really what that was for a larger width of trench for the utility connections that were originally anticipated. Really on that one, what happened was when the contractor got in, when they realized the depth of the utilities and the amount of equipment they needed to get really to shore in the trench, they asked for a larger width of trench to accommodate that work. We reviewed that with the engineer and with staff and agreed that a larger trench would be more appropriate, and because of that, the pavement that was included on.
I just think that should have been picked up during the process and how deep that was, but that's my opinion.
It was less than asked. Yeah, for more.
Yeah.
So it's,
I mean, it's underground. I mean, how do you know what, I know they try to get somewhat records, but I mean,
No.
it ends up being different and last thing we want to do is put somebody's health, their well-being.
Oh, that's exactly right. No, I agree with you.
Trench. And
That's why.
big backhoe in there, so.
Well, I guess that's why I thought, you kind of had an idea how deep some of that stuff was. And if you had to have a wider trench for safety and OSHA purposes, then I think that should have been figured out by the construction company or somebody else, not necessarily by engineering. But I also understand you've reduced it, but again, we get to a point where you either keep saying yes to all the change orders, or you kind of draw a line and say, this is not where you go. So my line, and I understand. So
And I agree with you most of the time. This one I agree.
All right.
And then I will also want to say thank you very much on because that very first day, because I'm like, I'm gonna get a ton of phone calls from North Ninth. I was just prepared and the first day I went to work early and they already had the signs out and perfect. Thank you very much for saying that this is not a through street and traffic, please go around. So that made a huge difference. So I still saw a few, but for the most part, everybody went. So anyway, thank you.
And it was really quick. I mean, I do want to think that too. I know it was the last meeting I asked when that would be completed and the next day we were back open. So thank you for that. All right, Jackie, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Beach,
Aye.
Richardson,
Nay.
Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Next item is G. Can I get a first and second motion to approve the resolution approving change order number 9 and payment application number 18 for the Indianola City Square reconstruction project?
Second.
Thank you. Steve?
Well, Charlie, you want to go back up again, but this was basically because CenturyLink didn't have the information to you, is that correct, or what was the situation?
Yeah, so, Bolton and Mink had requested utility locates prior to their survey back in 2020 on this. Actually, Bolton and Mink's done a really good job, provided the documentation on all of the requests that they made. On this one in particular, CenturyLink responded with a clear, meaning that no conflicts exist. Our engineer did know that the utility vault manhole was there, however, was just generally under the assumption that there was going to be no conflicts based off the information that CenturyLink provided. However, once we took off the concrete, got into the ground, we realized that CenturyLink gave us an all clear in air and we had to adjust at that point.
Anyway, we can figure out a way to go back to CenturyLink on that, or is that something we're just gonna have to eat?
I'll get you a little bit on that.
What we would spend on dealing with.
Yeah, it would be difficult only because CenturyLink could say, well, it cost you this anyway. So, you know, if we had seen it, you would have had to factor it into your costs. So, I mean, you could always make demand on them. My experience with them has been they're not great to deal with.
That's most everybody.
And I would tell you, go clear back to when we did the
Yeah.
highway corridor on North Edge Town. They were the biggest problem we had to deal with locates. So I mean, that's,
Yeah.
as soon as I heard CenturyLink,
Oh, yeah.
of course it is. And I thought the same thing. I'm like, well, we're gonna stick them for the bill then, right? That ain't gonna happen. So. Agree with you.
How much was this one again, Charlie?
Oh, I don't have one.
28,000.
28,000?
And just really quick, and AP wants to say something here too, I'll jump in. And really that is just to protect the sanitary sewer line. You know, typically we're using more plastic sanitary sewer lines in the new project, but because of that all, we had to go to the ductile iron really just to protect it. And that's what drove the cost up on that.
Right, I understand.
So,
And to answer your question, Steve, that if we can go after CenturyLink, but I don't know how much time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in our public right away.
Yeah.
I mean, we have an agreement possibly with franchise agreement, but it will delay our project significantly.
Yeah, I get it.
and I think that's, you know, and AP brings a good point there. And just for that information, that was one thing we did look into too was, you know, we, the city, since it's in our right of way, could force CenturyLink to move the conflicting utility. However, that was most likely going to lead to a very large delay in the project, which we know because of the business owners downtown.
Right.
And trying to get this project done in one calendar year here on the alley project was probably just going to delay everything even more on that point. So.
So is it fair to say that we have CenturyLink to deal with on the other?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, they're in many places around the square and some very old vaults that we found. So, and you know, the other thing I would say too, you know, there's probably better regulations at the state level that could happen to maybe assist us a little bit too. And those are conversations I think we can have in the future. I know other states handle this differently. And we just, I don't want to say that Iowa is generally friendly to utilities and the franchise utilities. I mean, I can look back to these guys and know that we've had a lot of issues with some of these utilities in the past and trying to get them to work with us. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, you make a good point. It probably costs us a lot more to go. AP, if you can do anything at all, it'd be great, but
And they count on that.
yeah, yeah.
That's the frustrating thing, is they count on that.
All right, Jackie?
Councilmember Beach,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Hi.
Schroeder.
I.
That was
And I.
Yeah.
We got Steve on one though, so I feel like it's a good accomplishment. Moving on to item P, I need a first and second motion of approval of a letter from
Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, we're on item P.
Service Line Warranties of America.
So moved.
Thanks, Gwen.
Second.
Thank you. I know there's, I think, a couple. Right, who wanna, some statements, I'll let you start, Steve.
Well, I do struggle with this, the role of city government and private sector. I guess the comments I received regarding that is that past letter was asking why the city was, I kept getting the questions of why we were endorsing one company and where we got local companies that, even though it may not be part of your home insurance, there are probably local insurance companies that offer that kind of insurance on it. I just don't think it's our role to send this letter out with our logo on it or any kind of a discussion about partnering with City of Indianola. I just don't think it's right.
I completely agree. I don't think it's a place that we need to be putting our logo on a third party company's letters that they're sending out. I got a lot of feedback last year from especially the elderly folk within the community that felt like it was more of a demand from the city that they had to get this insurance. Or they were gonna be in some kind of violation. And even now, like reading through the letter, it's still very demanding to me. And even though they moved the logo from the top to the bottom, it still says City of Indianola at the top of it. It's still- For me, I think it's somewhere we shouldn't be going.
I agree with both those statements. My biggest concern is that it's sent out in black and white, and from a city standpoint, we would never send our logo out in black and white. It's color for a reason, and but ultimately, that's just my opinion. So, you guys have anything?
It does have a statement at the bottom,
Mhm.
know, that does some separation between the city and this third party service. It's right next to the logo, if I remember right.
I mean, I agree that it's a little misleading, but I think, as Andy said in the explanation to you, Steve, that, you know, we endorse the league endorses it. I thought that was a good explanation.
Yeah, boy, I don't disagree with you, Glenn. I just think that it's not our role. to
Yeah,
do
I think
that.
you have a valid.
I just don't think it's our role.
Like last time we discussed this, we were going to talk about the number of times that the letter was sent out. Was that addressed with this company?
I think the council had talked about only doing it once in the year, and this would be the one if you so chose.
Is there a reason why the city couldn't actually send out a letter saying, hey, just so you're aware, this is a third party company that offers this insurance, but you may also be able to get it through your local homeowner's insurance too? Instead of having them send out.
It gets us into the private sector area, and we're already kind of right there. It would probably be better just to not issue the letter with our letterhead than to create confusion by having two letters come out.
You know how many people use that service in the past years?
No, but we could have Steve come. If you want to continue with if the council wants to continue with the program, it's up to council whether or not want to. Don't want to, then council can decide to withdraw from the program. I can always have Steve come and talk to the council. Last year when we were deciding on, suspending the mailing, Steve did come and talk to the council about participating and what had been paid out and have residents in the past. So if you'd like to have it, do that again, like we can gladly.
Actually, really expensive insurance. I mean, it is actually a good program for the citizens that live in, say, an older area where, I mean, back in the day, I mean, when the I&I started, it was pretty reasonable. Then all of a sudden those bills got really expensive to go in and replace those laterals and stuff. So, I mean, the bad thing is it's a good program.
It ruffled agents a little bit, and I think.
Well, I mean, but how many of them were out? How many were them out promoting it? None of them.
Exactly, now.
Single one of them. Well, I mean, that's
I
I
think.
mean, to me, as someone in private business, that marketing lands on my shoulders. I mean, it is what it is. If the local guys aren't doing their job, that's what these people are here for. Those tiers really don't get anywhere with me when it comes to other businesses.
No, I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying that they indicated that they, felt a little at a disadvantage, and I would bet that now they're talking about it.
I think Andy's point about the number of people and stuff to do it, I go back to Christina's comment. I think some people felt like that he was telling them they had to do it. And I got that comment as well, but I just don't think this is the role of government in that kind of situation. And John, I agree with you about it's cheap and it's good and those kinds of things. And if people want to get it, I think they should, maybe they can send a letter out without the endorsement or without the language that says it's endorsed by the city of Indianola.
Part of the problem there is that it's out from outside of town, and
Yeah.
legit, by putting the city logo in there is somewhat of an quasi endorsement. It legitimizes the organization. And in this day and age where I don't trust anything that gets sent to me, that's, and I'm sure other people are that way too, because you never know what's a scam and what's not. So I think that's probably what they have found over the years and why they do that is it makes it tough for them to. But anyway.
Any other discussion? I think all really good points, all very valid.
Can I add something? I noticed.
Typical Kathy, but absolutely. We'll listen to you. We're
the
easy.
letter we got recently only applied to our water lines, not our sewer lines.
Interesting.
I wonder if they found out how expensive the older neighborhoods are. I dropped offering the sewer line.
This one says both.
My letter won't open.
Just
Mine
I
won't.
can't get anything to open
Yeah,
either,
it's-
Jason. I think we're having
Water,
technology.
sewer, septic.
I can't see any of my attachments.
It actually covers both is what, I think you got to believe you have a choice. Maybe you could do one or the other or both.
That's what the previous ones had said, but this one, they only gave
Yeah.
us an option of water line in our neighborhood.
Interesting. All right, thank you. Jackie?
Councilmember Beach,
Nay.
Richardson,
Hey,
Parker,
Aye.
Selby,
Aye.
Stover,
Aye.
Great, motion passes 3-2. We will move on to council reports. I need a second motion on the appointment of Aaron Labertu to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission for a term beginning immediately and ending July 1st, 2025.
Mayor?
Absolutely.
I know there was some question with regard to the process by which the staff puts these type of appointments on the agenda. That maybe has caused some concern or some confusion with regard to how the selection process works. In the past, the executive board of the city council would review these applications and determine who on their merits would most beneficial and bring the most skills and talents to the planning commission and be able to fulfill the role on behalf of the residents that they serve. However, when we disbanded the executive committee, the council made a switch, and for the lack of staff wanting to involve itself in the selection process, we have just been taking the direction to the council policies to take first in, first out. So if a name gets put on there, it's the first one there. If there's an open slot, it gets considered by the council. And I think that has been the question and concern is, do we have other applicants? Should we be going through some sort of methodology where we evaluate the merits of those and the credentials of those who are applying so that they can best serve our residents? And we're happy to take any counsel or direction that you would have and modify that policy if you so chose. So that it helps the process move forward and we're evaluating everybody fairly and equally.
The last, since I've been here, we've gone based on qualifications rather than first in, first available, first out, and that's how I like to make those decisions.
I would agree.
Is based on
I think this one
qualifications
was-
and experience.
It was a little unique, this situation, because I think Jackie, I think you told me on Wednesday that we had a resignation due to timing, his commitment with P and Z. And I think, did this gentleman apply then immediately?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it was just a matter of timing. Usually people don't apply that quickly. Yeah, well, I think it's definitely important that we have the right skill set.
The only question of concern is how would you like us to go about that? So that we ensure that we're following the correct process, because when you start evaluating even employees, when I was interviewed for the position that I'm in, it was done in closed session, so you could have at my request, so that you could have a candid conversation about my credentials and whether I could serve the community well. When we bring that forward, we never want to be disparaging towards anyone who would volunteer and want to serve our community, but we do want to evaluate multiple candidates to make sure we have the very best person selected. So that's hard when we were walking that fine line between being transparent, having everything on the agenda, or having a more candid conversation about the credentials, maybe with a smaller group. We're happy to proceed however you would like us to, but we just don't know how you would want us to do so.
And
Steve.
well, I was just gonna say your executive committee before, you guys kind of went through that process, didn't you? If I'm not mistaken, and you did it on merit. Whereas we don't have that now, so let this straight. So we had a resignation. Aaron applied last week. Is that how that whole thing?
Everything, it all happened kind of, I think, all at once. Resignation.
Couple of days.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. I don't know how we want to handle exactly with Aaron, but my thought is, let's take this whole process, let staff work on this and come up with some suggestions, whether you include one council member or the mayor or whatever, and walk through that process. And give us a recommendation on how we move forward with that.
Well, we do have, I think, 2 vacancies on the planning commission right now. Is that correct?
There's one vacancy and then Bob Ormsby's term is up, but he's filling his 6 months after the term is up. But he does not intend to be appointed. So
So we do
be
have
2 vacancies.
some time, but we just don't want to make sure that we don't, we proceed as you would have us proceed.
Right, this is our thing, so
I got it.
I don't really, nothing against you guys. I don't want a recommendation from you guys. I want it to be us to decide how we deal with it. And to be honest with you, I mean, I don't know why we couldn't have an ad hoc committee to be able to do that. I mean, again, I was part of the executive committee. I like the process. I've been on executive committees on CBB. I've been on executive committees on other boards, and it works fairly well for those types of things. That now I will tell you that we also let everybody know who all, I mean, it wasn't like it was a 3 people here on the executive committee are gonna get these people on. No, it was open and honest. Everybody knew what, and actually took input. And it's easier when you have 3 people to have one conversation to find out, does anybody have any concerns? Does, or whatever. And the other thing too, have no problem being transparent and honest and talking about somebody in a public meeting.
Right.
I don't believe that's right. And I would hate to, I applied for something and I know there are people out there that don't like me, don't want me anywhere near anything, and that's fine. But I wouldn't want them in that position to have to say that in a public meeting, because
It's a
it makes
volunteer,
it
they're
difficult.
volunteer position.
And I really, while I'm always open and honest and transparent, sometimes it's just not right to.
No,
to drag people, because then guess what? We're gonna have less and less people that are gonna want to apply for something. And I also want to state right now, I don't want Aaron, who's probably watching this going, I didn't even get a motion. Had nothing to do with them. I wanted to get the process done first. Talked to Charlie today. He said, time, we need to get them replaced, but we do have time. So I'd rather get the process in place first before we.
We've had this discussion before about not reviewing events in public meetings.
We can, but I just don't feel it's right.
Well, and I think that set Aaron up for success on that commission with, his background. Is there maybe a better commission that his skill set could fit in? I think that we have to make sure we're setting the appointees up for success too.
Right.
And putting them where, he's a good natural fit. So
Right.
I guess if,
my thinking would be then we just have like John said, an ad hoc committee,
It's a good suggestion.
but it's called the nominations ad hoc committee, and let them take it off. But I think maybe 2 members and the mayor, maybe.
Well, it'd be ours because it's the mayor has.
Their own-
has their-
I got my own over here.
Yeah, so I think it needs to be 3 members of the council.
Do you want us to pick 3 members or do you want us to randomly pick, out of a hat? Time or how, is there a?
There should be a
Criteria for-
consistent committee.
I think if it's ad hoc, it means it's just temporary, so you can pick different people at different times, I suppose. John, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Or yeah, or we could just do it as a. I'm, in your 4 years, you're gonna be on it probably a couple of times, I mean, I don't have an issue with it.
It's not gonna be a terrible big time commitment,
No,
even now with
It's
Zoom
really-
abilities.
yeah,
doing a
really
three-way
with
phone
us
call.
having most everything in June, with the terms ending in June, we'd be doing it and hopefully in April, when we should really kind of get most of that stuff nailed down. So we do have a few other committees and commissions that are off of that, but yeah, to me, I think that makes more sense.
Do we need something here on this issue?
I'm hearing that you want to table this and direct staff to bring you the council policies back with this. And
Do we need to accept this motion then for this and table it, or can we just table the whole conversation? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would make that motion then.
Second.
Pardon me?
To what meeting?
The next meeting.
Yeah, we'll have time. All right.
Perfect.
Jay, you call the roll?
Councilmember Parker,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Beach. Richardson.
Probably need to put our committee together real quick.
Probably.
I know Gwen said she would volunteer.
I can't meet for a little bit this next week, but.
Are we okay to do that?
Right.
Gwen and Christina?
We want.
John, you sound like you're gonna join it. I mean.
I know, I don't have to. I don't have to.
Even Steve Arm Russell.
No,
Ron,
I'm
Good either way. I'm good. I can, if you want me, I got
I
3.
mean, I think in 2, we don't have that many, right? So John's not available for a call, then.
I was gonna say, yeah, if somebody's not
Your guys'
available.
is, so I'll let you do it.
So we'll have you guys then, but if it doesn't work out where you can then check with Ron or I, if we can do it, that's fine.
Perfect. Great.
I guess one more question on that. So is that 3-person committee then going to send out or contact the other council members and ask for some feedback?
Yeah, I think so. Get some input.
John, help me remember, did we used to receive the applications as a council and then, yeah, so.
And just got
the
input.
Applications go out to all the council members and then the ad hoc committee
Mhm.
contacts individual members to get a consensus, then we can take that back together.
Well, not a consensus.
No, it's not a consensus.
Not a
No, just
consensus.
discussion.
A
Is there any
feedback,
concern, any
recommendation.
feedback, any concerns or feed or positives? Yeah.
you don't want to violate the.
No, yeah, no.
Yeah, all you're doing is,
Wrong word.
yeah, you just need, when the nominations go out, if you want to talk to somebody about it, then it gets missed.
I need a first and second motion to receive and file the March 2023 treasurer's report.
So move for second.
Thank you. And any discussion? Got Mr. Shaw here today, hiding back there. All right, no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item C, Metro Advisory Committee report with Councilmember Richardson.
I believe I sent this out to all of you, my notes from the MAC meeting. Senate file 550 has been rolled into House File 1. House File 1 was struck in its entirety and reinserted with portions of House File or Senate File 550 is the the bill that deals with local option sales tax, the reduction of commercial property rollback from 10% to 20%. And the homestead credit tax credit overhauling that as well. And the biggest controversy there obviously is lost as a local option sales tax because it will trigger that I will, which is at 3/8 of a cent. And there was something else. I think Vyland was talking to me tonight about there's some things in there as well that affects parks and recreational issues as well. And so we need to pay attention. I guess that's my point. So House File 605 talks about prohibiting cities from counties from requiring a decrease in the average energy of use of a property or requiring the average energy use of a property to be less than the average energy use of similar situated properties. That's probably something that IMU probably should take a look at, just to make sure that we as a city could be okay with that. So maybe you can take that back to IMU and have them talk about it. Everything else is, I think you saw my notes there. Oh, the facade, Senate file or House File 412. Charlie, was that something that you remember that? That one's on the facades and the supports entertainment districts and surtaxes and stuff. That.
Aware of it, yeah.
Okay, that's something that might be good for us as well. So there's some good things there too, not all bad, but again, keep an eye on House File 1.
Thank you, Steve. Moving on to the mayor's report before Mayor's Youth Council members who were here this evening, Jack Hilton, Ryan Young, and Hazy Cambrin, Lake Martin. On Friday night, attended the Makers versus Pacemakers basketball game. No one broke anything, no hips were hurt in it, but it was a lot of fun, and
Brian can't walk.
they only won by 5, the police. So next year, I think they're gonna bring their game. The grannies. Yeah.
I want to know though, who was the officer that sunk that underhanded 3-point shot?
That would be Michael Chia's greatest accomplishment.
I have the jersey.
After playing football here.
I got that.
You.
College and being a star there, his greatest accomplishment happened Friday night.
I mean.
I want to know if he practiced.
So that was definitely it. But
His father's right back there. You said.
I do think there's some questions about the MVP and maybe a little debate over who the MVP was. I'm not gonna say, but Largest was extremely sad that he was not the MVP. Yeah, but good job, Captain Hawkins, Fufu for winning the MVP. And you guys raised over $6,400 that night? Hello? Great. It was
It was
amazing.
really fun.
We had a good.
So much fun.
Still feeling.
Old business, the North Jefferson Way Trail Connections Project. I need a first and second motion. Open the public hearing regarding the plan specifications, form of contract and estimates of costs for the North Jefferson Trail Connections Project.
So moved as read.
Jackie?
Member Dolby,
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Beach.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Doug, are you presenting this one?
Council Mayor and Council Doug Wyland, Parks and Recreation Director. I don't know if you have too many questions, pretty straightforward. The map here, the blue section we're talking about. Bids in May, March 28th. 6 companies, so that was really good. And they were pretty competitive bids, all under budget, so that's even better.
In a row.
2 sections there in the red. And yellow sections will be completed by the numbers here yet this summer.
What was the total budget on that, Doug? Do you remember?
We had budgeted 9.
Perfect. Thank you. Better.
Win-win. Good job, Doug.
Charlie did all the work.
Good job, Charlie.
And Snyder and David and Snyder and them.
Good job to everybody in the room. I'd go around and say good job to everyone, but it's gonna start feeling a little insincere at that point. All right, any questions for Doug? Is there anyone who would like to speak on this matter? Please come to the lectern and please state your name and address for the record. So none, can I get a first and second motion to close the public hearing? Jackie?
Councilmember Dolby,
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Beach.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Approving the plan specifications, form of contract and estimate of costs for the North Jefferson Trail Connections Project.
So moved as read.
Second.
More discussion? Keith?
Councilmember Parker.
Aye.
Dolby.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Beach.
Aye.
Richardson.
Need a first and second motion on a resolution awarding a contract for the North Jefferson Way Trail Project.
So moved as read.
Second.
Jackie?
Councilmember Dolby,
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Beach.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
We will move on to fiscal year 24 budget. I need a first and second motion to open the public hearing regarding the fiscal year 24 budget for the city of Indianola.
Moved.
Jay.
Councilmember Schroeder,
Aye.
Leach,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Dolby.
Aye. Mayor, members of the council, I just want to go over real quickly for the FY 24 annual budget. Some key highlights, talk about a little bit about the rollbacks and valuation differences for the past several years. Briefly touch on the revenues and expenditures next fiscal year, and then touch on the consolidated tax levy between the city, county, and the school district. There's some key highlights for the upcoming year. Overall, the city levy will remain at 1355. Last year was 1354.45, so rounded up it's 55. So staying right at 13.55. Some we're going to look at hiring new personnel, new communications director to communicate more with the public about things that are going on in the city and promote the city within the metro area. New fire marshal for inspections and EMS captain. And then a new street superintendent to help out with on-site supervision of road crew. And so free up AP with some of the stuff that you have to do with some of those projects. And then an assistant director with helping to operate the water resource recovery facility. On capital projects, of course, Hillcrest and K Street. Going to continue with those projects, finalize this square streetscape, and then hit on a couple stormwater projects, including Clinton Avenue culvert and 14th Street drainage improvements. On the rollbacks, the rollback went for the single family residential did go up slightly. You'll note that it did have that note at the bottom there. It was actually beginning, we had it at a much higher or lower rollback, but unfortunately, that was cut back by a correction, as you well know, and that's why the approval of the FY 24 annual budget has been pushed to April 30th. Commercial and industrial, of course, stay at 90%, but as Councilman pointed out, there's a bill that's it's currently up at the State House to move those back to 85 and then 80%. So we want to keep track of that bill. And then multifamily residential went from 63.75 to be included with single family residential at 54 points. One thing that I did want to point out is the changes of this last several years of 100% full valuation and taxable valuation. One of the things that you'll notice there is that the distance between full valuation and taxable valuation increases over the year. In fact, since FY 2014, full valuation has grown by 357 million, while taxable valuation has only grown by 181 million, a difference of 176 million. So as we watch legislation that comes out of the State House, we want to make sure we want to track some of that for some of the valuations, the differences between the full valuation and taxable. Fortunately, we have some growth in the city, but unfortunately, taxable valuation is not keeping up that full valuation. On our revenues, you notice that a large chunk of our revenues do come from property taxes, but also from fees and charges for services. It's not only for sanitary sewer and storm sewer, but also for our EMS services as well. And then for expenditures, pretty well divided between utilities, capital projects, and public safety, but the large part is that of the general government. You'll notice general government is on the, that'd be on the right-hand side of the pie chart. A large part of that is it's public safety with administration and community development and economic development being the quarter of that half, and then or half of the half of 25% of the full, and then the rest is capital projects and utility services. And then on the consolidated tax levy, I just wanted to point out city levy for overall property tax bill is 33% of the overall tax bill. Other entities, the main entities that also are part of that property tax bill are the school district. Any questions? As we move.
So Andy, what was the expenditure last year? 2023 was our total budget last year versus total budget in 2024. I mean, dollar wise, do we have the number on that?
I do not have it.
Any other questions? Anyone wishing to speak on this matter? Come forward. State your name. Can I get a first and second motion to close the public hearing?
Moved. Second.
Jackie?
Councilmember Dalby,
Aye.
Schroeder, Peach,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Need a first and second motion on a resolution approving the fiscal year 24 budget for the city of Indianola.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? Jackie?
Councilmember Dalby,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Peach,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Get on into new business. I need a first and second motion on the first consideration of an ordinance amending chapter 99 sewer service charges and Indianola Code of Ordinances.
So moved.
Second.
Come back up. I know.
Oh, we don't?
I wonder if it's civic clerk.
I'm just here to answer any questions. I thought I had a slide that I put some to remind about the ordinance that we're increasing the sanitary sewer fees so that Mike Maloney had been here previously to give you information about how we need to increase the sanitary sewer fees. So it's mainly because of our bond requirement and revenues that we have to meet in order to comply with water resource recovery facility. Fortunately, the revenue that we're currently collecting is not met. So that's why.
All right. Other discussion?
What's the percentage of increase again on that?
I believe it's around 25%.
Your civic clerk. aren't you?
No,
on the
I went on the
I can't get
website
in.
and downloaded the packet.
I didn't.
So the basic rate goes from 18 something to 25 something, is it correct? Does, so how much of an increase for every 1,000 gallons after that?
12.31. Before it was $12.31. Now it's $14.38.
Yeah, I can't pull it up either. That's why it's gonna.
Are you guys in Civic Plus or are you on the?
Download
website?
mine every time.
Smart. You've learned after all those years, John Parker's got the secret.
That's techno.
But the one section in here, it says regardless of the charge as calculated, each contributor shall pay a minimum monthly charge of $25.
That's the minimum.
Correct.
That's the minimum fee.
That's the service.
The service fee at the number one.
And currently that's set at 17.
No, I'm talking in section 2. It's going from 12.31
Well,
to 25.
That's for the high strength. We have some that contribute to the sanitary sewer system, and I believe Rick Graves on Zoom and can explain this a little bit better than I can, but they contribute more in strength as far as the solids and things like that than a normal residential user. So they're charged at a higher.
so I gave you the wrong information first time, Steve. It was $9.85 to $11.50 for a residential normal user.
Basic.
Yeah, yep. It went from $18 to $25 for the basic fee, the minimum fee for the first 1,000 gallons. And then it was $9.85 before, now it's $11.50.
Okay.
Per 1,000 gallons. The high strength, the one that went from 12.38 to 14.38.
Yeah, I'm getting that pulled up now, I think.
I won't pull up on the website.
Okay, thank you, John. Not either.
Any other questions? Jackie?
Councilmember Parker,
Aye.
Dalby.
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Beach,
Nay.
Richardson.
Mayor, before we move on real quick, like, thank you staff for the budget, by the way. You guys put a lot of time and effort into it and we kind of approved it and I was like getting ready to say something and we moved on, but that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. It's a big, I mean, Andy's just now getting excited because he's gonna get a reprieve for just a few weeks before he starts next year. So, yeah, but thank you staff for what you've done and the process is really good. I appreciate it as I've seen it over the last 12 years and it just gets better every time. So thank you again for all your hard work and effort. So sorry about that. I just want to make sure they got.
No, I think that's a really positive note and thank you guys. So moving forward, I need a first and second motion on a first consideration of an ordinance amending the city code of the city of Indianola to amend prohibited scavenging practices.
So moved.
Second. All right, discussion.
So I had an issue with the whole scavenging portion altogether. Just specifically, like right now, we're doing spring cleanup. And there's a lot of people who go around and they pick up the metal and things that are on the curbs. I mean, that's keeping that out of our landfills. I mean, they're taking it to be recycled. Or gaining a profit from it. I mean, is this gonna impede them? Or is it supposed to already be impeding them from doing that? If so, why can't we just put a parameter on dumpster diving specifically? I mean, that's really, I think, what it was originally created for.
I don't know the original intent behind the ordinance, but I do know that there's certain uncomfortability for residents that other residents are going through their garbages. And it does attract people to come in and get into those garbages. We have some legitimate reasons for investigative purposes that we want to be able to get into those, but it's kind of a question that we really didn't address until this very moment. But it's certainly something we could.
I mean, adding the police officer, I don't have an issue with that. For me, I just think, especially during spring cleanup, they are pulling so much metal and things from these curbs that would otherwise be going straight to our landfills. And I get, no, people should not be digging through people's trash cans and just making giant messes. And I think if we could clarify some of that a little bit more, I
think this is specifically speaking to that, right? You can't go into the receptacles. Am I wrong on that? It's not stuff that's on side of the, like, that you put on your curb, is it?
says anything that's out for collection.
Oh, okay. Cause like I picked up a chair today and I don't have.
Or last year's.
Jack got a double stroller.
Yeah.
Grandpa got a double stroller.
People off.
Exactly.
And Marie did it, and it's all sanded and beautiful now.
Can I ask, what's the purpose of adding, for a certified police officer? What was the background for changing the ordinance there?
It's basically to allow for investigative purposes. There is some question.
Won't they need a warrant though before they do that? We're just saying a police officer can pull up and start going through someone's trash?
Correct. Sure. And that's how it's always.
I mean, technically, it's already
That's historically how it's always been, because of case law changes that has now become a question, but historically, you've always been, the police officers have always been. Once there's a certain expectation of lots of privacy once you put it into a trash receptacle and put it out to the curb.
It's only if it's on the.
Yeah, it's not up by your house, but out at the curb.
I agree with you, because no, I don't, I think it's almost like people just kind of understand and appreciate spring cleaning time of year. We're not the only community that does it, and people know that they can go around, and it's kind of a, I don't know, there's almost a sport to it. As you can guess, it's got a double stroller, a chair and table, and you clean them up and.
Ben, have you experienced junk, you haven't experienced junk days here yet, have you?
I've never
Certainly
seen.
not.
Understand somebody pulling up and digging through the dumpsters you're sitting out, or as a business, you have your dumpster out back and people pull stuff out. And so I do understand that part of it, but I guess I don't know how we address that. And I don't know.
Essentially, like some people even put like free on the curb, like a post on
Yeah.
Facebook, you know, that they have items free on the curb. So technically,
Which I also don't love. I mean, we are trying to keep the community cleaner and.
It's usually
while
gone
you're-
so
Can we get a chair then, Ben? I got a great chair.
Sorry.
You would maybe have a piece in the ordinance that would, when we have spring cleanup or whatever it is, that week is from that particular portion of the ordinance.
I mean, because it is going to get into an enforcement nightmare if you're supposed to, I mean, everybody you see carrying junk and.
right.
Those will be enforced by complaint driven only.
You're right, you're right.
Your words.
I don't want to give away my secrets.
It's pretty low. You're right. I
Like
agree.
for me, like when I'm putting stuff out on the curb, if it's trash, it goes in my receptacle or in dumpster, like trash bags. If it's stuff that I
Someone else.
think
could use.
someone else could use, it sits next to the trash can, you know.
I mean, that's right. We should do that.
Yeah.
So do we need to send this back for review or what do we need?
Well, understand, first of all, that you already have this ordinance. All you're adding is the police officer, so.
Right.
You actually have to do something.
So we've been, so we've.
So I did break code today.
We've been
Brian,
violating the
send me
ordinance
my
all along.
ticket, okay?
So
That's why I think
maybe it's just one of those where we had the police just move along and just continue life as it's been. I don't know.
Well, you could, or we could just say, when you really need to go back and just fix it.
Good policy would make
Make a
a good,
good
yes.
Yeah.
Allowing the police to have this established ability to go and do investigations, that's what's really critical right now.
You should have that.
Everything else is, like Chief Chia has already said, is really complaint driven. We're not.
Chia.
Sorry about that. I just promote. And going over right now, we can bring it back if you so chose, but we haven't had issues or complaints that people are feeling terrorists from other.
But I do think maybe we do need. Don't want to.
Let's send it back staff for some recommendations on solving some of the issues that we just discussed here tonight.
Just so that way we are, I mean, does that make sense, Charlie, as the keeper of the code? Okay.
It doesn't seem like it would take much, right? If you-
Yeah, I mean, it really.
If we don't pass this, is going to prevent our police officers from
No, I
being
think
able to,
So it's just whether we then direct staff to.
yeah, to relook
bring
at
something
it.
back and take a look at it to make sure there's exceptions are covered.
It's only gonna be complaint basis.
Yeah, but
Discretion anyway.
Yeah, good policy though. I mean, we really should.
We're supposed to be reviewing our ordinances anyway, right? So.
I think, Doug, I mean, rather than just ignoring it, we should probably. We have it, if we have that time of year where we do have it and we want to look the other way, we just soon have it in policy to.
Exempt it pretty easily.
Okay. All right, let's do that then. I think that makes more
All right.
sense.
bring it back with an exemption. Okay.
Okay, so we are going to table this one?
No,
No, we're gonna move forward and then come back. You told me that, John. I didn't listen very well. Okay, Jackie.
Councilmember Beach,
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Colby,
No.
Schroeder,
Aye.
All right, moving forward to number 3, I need a first and second motion on a first consideration of an ordinance to amend this Code of Ordinances of the City of Indianola, Iowa by amending section 48.05 sounds not allowed. Thank you.
Good evening. As the council recall, on the March 6th meeting, you did direct staff to look into various items of our code related to a complaint that was received. That included commercial vehicle parking in a residential neighborhood, as well as the noise coming from said vehicle. As we were reviewing that, the Planning and Zoning Commission did actually review 4 changes that we had made. One was to the noise ordinance. The other one was to vehicle parking on residential or vehicle parking on all streets, excuse me. And then the parking of commercial vehicles on private property. And at its meeting on March 28th, the Planning and Zoning Commission did remand the proposed changes back to staff for revisions. More specifically, they requested that the noise ordinance, section 48.05, that the hours be changed from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So reducing the amount of time that noise would be disallowed, and then adding a certain decibel level of the sound. There was revisions to section 69.09. They wanted to allow for trailers, RVs, campers, boats, and similar recreational equipment parking on streets. To allow that except between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So essentially to disallow overnight parking of those vehicles. They did ask to remove all changes to chapter 165, which would further allow commercial vehicle parking on private property. And then further, they asked us to look into the length of vehicles which are parked in the downtown square. So the changes that you're reviewing right here are specific to the noise ordinance. AP's got some changes to various codes. The parking of commercial vehicles on streets, the one that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended there, that's in that code, but I'm going to talk about it right here just because I was part of that and AP wasn't. But first, when we looked at the decibel.
Do we have a slide that matches this or?
Yeah,
is this
I
just-
can't see anything.
Yeah, no, there was, and I didn't have a slide or anything on this one in particular.
You can look at these, Charlie, as 2 separate issues. I feel that we have a noise ordinance. So maybe let's start with the noise.
Yep, so that's,
And then let's do the parking.
okay, and that's exactly what I was getting to. I was
Perfect.
trying to get to and I apologize, but on the noise ordinance, again, the noise ordinance says it's between, that you cannot have sound plainly audible from a residential structure at a sound level of 55 decibels between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. The 55 decibels, I wanted to make sure I wasn't just arbitrarily pulling that number out of the air. What we did is we looked at some of the surrounding communities in the metro, and that ranged from 50 decibels to 65 decibels. And I took the average of those communities. It was right around that 55 number, so I went with that one. Reasoning for 55 decibels, so
You know what an average car decibel levels?
I don't know.
Electric cars are about 55.
Yeah, and I
That's
think.
an electric car.
Diesel trucks are
100. Right next to it, I think, too. So this is at the edge of the residential structure between those 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.
I think the biggest concern I had, I reached out to TRM. They start their first truck at 4 o'clock in the morning. Their route leaves at 4:30. You landfill friends will understand this. So their routes are because the landfill closes at 3:30. And if they're going to be delayed, because their trucks are way above 55, if they'll be delayed, that will mean that they won't be able to finish their shifts by dumping at the landfill. So they'll have to leave their trucks overnight at TRM in their lots and then take them in the morning. And all I think about in the summer is how terrible that would smell. Because they're running probably anywhere from 100 to 125 decibels and really does, I think it gets really tight there. Now, again, it's gonna come to an enforcement level, right? Because if a decibels, that's what it'll come to, enforcement.
Are we talking about residential or commercial?
It's from a residential structure, specifically.
TRM would be okay.
Yeah, TRM would be okay.
But they're driving through residential neighborhoods.
Yeah, they're in residential.
I don't know. what
I don't think it's-
They're not supposed to be, I mean, technically. it's
Well, I don't
okay,
think, yeah, I don't think they're
6
coming
a.m. They don't.
into the neighborhoods at 4:30. They're going out on their,
Highway, yeah.
but they are out before 7 a.m.
But so they're,
And
they're not collecting until after 6 a.m.
And I don't know that, again, the way this section is written, it is specifically, I'll use the word protecting residential structures, people inside residential structures from that noise.
So I mean, potentially, if my neighbor drives a motorcycle, he starts that motorcycle in his driveway at 4:30 in the morning to leave for work because he has to be there at 5:30. And his motorcycle is over that 55 decibels. And I want to be a horrible neighbor and call and complain on him every time he starts that motorcycle.
You're right.
I guess at that point, then it's on police. They would have to come out every single time I call and make that complaint. And at what point, I mean,
Will it be a matter of, they will also have to hear it like the fireworks, they have to observe them? Because someone could easily shut off their car when I didn't have. Yeah, and I don't, think we're gonna tie you guys up with a bunch of these problems, but I'm sure it will. Really
And this is a
interesting.
complete new,
Yes. There's nothing we have in our books currently. And again, it's based off the complaint that was received. Right. We took a look at
One
language
complaint.
to, yes,
one complaint.
I didn't get.
as far as I understand, yes.
They spelled my name wrong, so I didn't get the original one, so I was totally confused. Then I went back and.
Well, I'm just gonna go out on record and say I do not support this at all. I think this is unfounded and if one person complains and we're gonna go ahead and change for, again, I go to work 6 or earlier and I don't have a diesel pickup, but if I did, go out and start my truck in the wintertime at 4:30, 5 o'clock to let it warm up. I just,
Do we just need to change the decibels? I mean, would that help?
I don't even want decibels. We don't have decibels anywhere in any of our codes.
This one particular one, and I mean, I don't disagree with you, but this particular one is a pretty good sized commercial vehicle. Parked in a residential area, which I don't know if the parking maybe is the bigger issue.
But his
And
are
then solve the problem.
The parking is the
Right,
original.
right, but I can tell
intent of the
you-
complaint.
But I can tell you in my own experience that when I was growing up, my dad was told not to do that. And I get it. He was mad, it was his work, but we had to comply. Because people don't like it.
I just have an issue with impeding people's right to work and this is somebody's livelihood that we're talking about and other people's livelihoods. If they're not able to start their vehicle before a certain time period. And how much is the city gonna invest in the machines that are required to test the decibels? I
Well,
looked
we're
up the
not-
machines, they're like anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a piece. So
Now,
are we gonna equip every officer's car with one?
Well, so let's move on then to the parking. Because the parking is really the issue that causes the noise.
Well, and this, and again,
It's not we're not
this
changing.
this ordinance is specific to the noise that you're reviewing right now and parking is part of.
The next one.
Changes.
all right, so, Ron, you're quiet, you got anything?
I would agree that, I think we're gonna change ordinances for 0.5% of the population and. Just want to agree with that.
I do believe though that we need to be. Can't force people to be good neighbors either. I mean, that's just part of the game. At the same time though. Every time it snows, I have the county yard over next to us and everybody else is all beeping and everything, and I moved in knowing that, okay? Some of these folks didn't move in knowing that somebody was gonna pull some, and I'm not arguing yes or no, but I'm just saying that. The guy had been.
I'm not arguing yes or no either, but I can sympathize with the person who gets woken up. And that seems a little unfair.
The
also.
person was starting a motorcycle and letting it warm up for 20 minutes, listen. There's good neighbors and there's not good neighbors. And I just hope that people realize that, listen, there are folks that don't have to get up at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning. And there's people that do get up that early, but run your truck for an hour is a little bit ridiculous too. Just a personal statement.
Jackie? you call the roll?
Member Beach,
Hey,
Richardson,
Hey,
Parker, Baldy,
Hey,
Schroeder,
Moving on to item 4, I need a first and second motion on the first consideration of an ordinance amending the code of ordinances of the city of Indianola, Iowa by amending chapters 60, 61, 63, 64, 69, 70, and 71 related to the Indianola traffic code. AAP.
Good evening, council.
Oh, sorry, first and second motion, sorry. I got so excited, I saw you up there, it's like, hi, AP.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Right,
Good evening. Mayor. Director, I'm following up on a presentation that I did end of December, where we pointed out that there's several uncontrolled intersections in Indianola. And then I also pointed out that there are several sections in our city code that doesn't reflect what traffic control devices are actually on site and whether it's matching up with our code. It doesn't match with our code. Several segments for speed zones, stop signs, no parking signs do not match with our code. As a result, we started reviewing our city code and noticed that there are segments that needs to be updated, and we have basically proposed traffic control devices, stop signs at 93 intersections, of which 83 is at T intersections, which is one stop control, and then there are 10 intersections which has two-way stop control at a four-legged intersection. We have also requested council to give the Public Works Director the approval to install traffic control devices, not speed zone, sorry. Thank you. Yep, thank you. So we have also requested City Council to approve for Public Works Director approval for crosswalks, on-street parking, and disability parking. I have a typo here about the code limits. Sorry about that. So basically, we are requesting to upgrade the city code. The objective of this to improve the response time for traffic safety and immediate needs, where we will make sure that we are doing a traffic engineering study before implementing stop controls and no parking. We will do traffic study. We will coordinate with the police department before we are implementing any changes. What we have been advised by our attorney is that we cannot, the speed zones has to be approved by city council by state law. So we are not making any changes to the speed zones. When I say this, we are updating our code to make sure that it matches, the speed zones are matching with what's actually in the field. With that, I think there's a repeat on this slide. With that, I just wanted to provide a map, and in your council packet, you have a list of all the intersections of all the uncontrolled intersections that we are proposing for stop control. Then Charlie has the item for the a portion of the code for the commercial and recreational vehicle.
Yeah, so quickly jumping back in on this, Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation on this section. Currently in this section, the only thing we restrict as a city from parking at all in any areas of the street are semi and tractor trailers. So the recommendation here was to create a section that allowed parking for RVs and other types of commercial vehicles on street, except for the hours between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So again, essentially restricting the overnight parking.
Can I ask why a time frame? Because to be honest with you, if it's a hindrance having them there, there's less traffic overnight than there is during the day.
I think, so let me go back to, we were directed to take a look at this. What I did when we presented this Planning and Zoning Commission is I said, okay, if you're going to fully regulate this to the fullest extent that you can, here's the regulations that you would look at. Planning and Zoning Commission asked us to back off a little bit. I think some of the conversation that took place at the meeting was, there's a lot of times people will come home from, the weekend, unload their RV on the street, maybe their boat's parked on the street while they're visiting a friend or something like that. But really what we were trying, I think the Planning and Zoning Commission was trying to do was just prevent the long-term storage of those types of vehicles on street. So they felt the overnight parking limitation would do that.
24 hours work better though.
Yeah.
All
No, we
right.
already have some. I thought that they couldn't park it more than 24 to 48 hours.
No, on the street, it's 72 hours right now.
And I do apologize because I must have been sleeping that night because otherwise if I would have caught on to the sound one and this one, I wouldn't have told you. I would have said, forget it now and don't even go and spend the time.
In a letter, right? We didn't about it.
It is at the very end of a.
It was at
I
the
would
very
have.
end.
In closed session.
I would.
Oh, I missed it.
It wouldn't have been closed session. No, it was open, but again, I apologize because I feel bad. Everybody's doing all this work and I'm shooting it down because I would have said no to begin with. Then I may have been the only one and that's fine, but I
actually am with you. I didn't think it ever was discussed either. And I was
I
told
didn't
that.
either. I found that, I had to ask. for
that's
What was
fine.
March, what was it? What was that date? March 7th?
March 6th.
Yeah, and that's fine. And again, I apologize. That's my fault. So I'll do better. So.
So right now, we limit it, after 72 hours, they have to move it.
Right, yeah.
Happily.
And
You know, and
it's street parking, otherwise in residence, it has to be on a cement pad and.
Yes, new stuff, you know, that we as a city used to allow gravel on private property. So there's some element of grandfathering in of those existing ones, but anything that is new or now does have to be on a hard surface, yes.
It's what I look at is, from time to time, you have citizens that are doing work in their land, maybe landscaping their backyard, and they rent a mini excavator for the weekend, so now it's gonna be sitting overnight,
I agree. I
A
don't
lot of
think.
times we take our boat, we'll leave early in the morning, so I'll go grab it at night. It's not there as much as time, and usually 9 o'clock, whatever, it sits on the street light, and then we get up and leave at 6 a.m. the next morning. So I know there's others that do it. I see them with their campers and all that. So I guess I would not be in favor of not allowing the overnight myself, but I would be all in favor of there's some sort of a time limit to 24 or leave it at 72. I don't know that I guess I'm not sure where the clamoring has come from that it even came up, so.
I think it started with this FedEx truck and it opened up the whole code, right, to look at and.
Because we don't allow semis, but the FedEx trucks are pretty big. Yeah.
But it does fit nicely in his driveway. It doesn't obstruct the sidewalk. There's plenty of walking distance. I think that's kind of where it came and it's not actually, I mean, it's box truck. It's not like big, huge semi, but so then specifically for the section 16507, where it disallows commercial vehicles on private property.
That's all stricken. That Plan and zoning commission.
Perfect. I mean, if I
So
scroll down, I would
are
have
we
saw that
taking
right
these
there.
at each? There's this one.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
yeah,
'cause
cause like the
I can't
sound is
read.
on here too, so do we essentially have to deny this whole thing and
The
then?
south's not on this.
It's in the, well, it is in the memo.
I was gonna say, yeah, it is
Yeah.
listed.
And that, again, hindsight being 2020, we probably should have separated these two, knowing what we know tonight, and I apologize for that, but the noise ordinance was the first one, and then we built this one into the other traffic regulations that AP was.
That's my concern. I support that part of it.
And I don't want to speak on behalf of Doug, but I think if that needs to be taken out, I think you can still approve on first consideration, noting that that section remain as is, if that's how.
Or you could pull out to say that, and the motion to pull out whatever sections you didn't want to.
We have a motion on the floor right now.
You have to withdraw that.
Okay, and so I can't pull it up on the website. I can't see it anywhere. So Charlie, you just said, what did you stricken out of it? You took out that, it used to say that commercial vehicles could not
It
park in
was-
residential properties.
Yeah, no, so that was, the Planning and Zoning Commission did not recommend the change for private property. What we're changing here is section 69.1. Currently 69.09 says that you cannot park a semi, tractor and trailer on streets. We modified that to include all commercial vehicles, plus RVs, boats, campers, those types of recreational equipment, except you could not park those between the hours of 10 PM and 6 AM. So if it remains as is, it's just continues to be no semi and tractor trailer parking at all. And the code change would be what we discussed.
Who made the motion?
Councilmember Schroeder did and Richardson second.
Withdraw my second. If she withdraws her motion. Yeah, and so you want to make the motion again to approve the other one and then go.
Well, we actually have amending chapter 60, 61, 63, 64, 69, 70, and 71. So which we would need to move 69.
It changes.
Which one? I'm sorry.
6909.
6909 as is. Okay, so I need a first and second motion on the first consideration of an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of City of Indianola, Iowa by amending chapters 60, 61, 63, 64, 70, 71 related to Indianola traffic code and keeping 6909 the same. Did I say that right?
Anything besides 09?
No, there's other changes on.
So
So all chapter 69.
69, except for 6909.
Yes, all changes with the exception. Apologize. Okay.
Yes.
So we are approving chapter 60, 61, 63, 64, 69, 70, 71, with the exceptions of 6909. All right, first and second. Thank you. Second.
Second, sorry, or
Yeah,
Steve.
no, actually, John's fine. I have a question.
Oh, sure.
AP, I have a question for you though. So I don't have a problem letting you have the responsibility to put up the signs, stop signs, but is the intent to put all those stop signs up within a short period of time, or is, I mean, I assume we have to look at traffic studies and a number of other things with these, or am I wrong on that assumption?
So on these ones, they are very low traffic volume roads. Most of them are, all of them are residential streets without any control. So the intent is to install these stop signs within the next 2 months, 2 or 3 months. We have the signs. All we have to need is the labor to go and install those signs. So we have reviewed these. We have completed, our staff has gone out to each and every site and assessed whatever we have provided here as our assessment of what stop control needs to be installed.
Okay. I just was wondering, a lot of stop signs that people are gonna get used to, which they will get used to, but it's just a lot of them for a short period of time.
It's a lot of great work, though.
Yeah, a lot of
You
great
To
work. No, I'm-
acknowledge, I know you came in with little data, so really appreciative of all that work. But yeah, I get it.
In an uncontrolled intersection, they should be stopping today.
Yeah, right.
I was just gonna say, so you're AP, that's pretty much an old practice that is gone by the wayside, is
Yeah,
what you're saying.
I think the state law says that you have to yield to your cars on your right hand side.
Right. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is as new streets come into communities, stuff like most of them
Yep.
are gonna be, there's no open intersections generally, and yeah.
That's probably where you get a lot of your accidents too. Would that be correct? Some of those? No?
Probably there's probably not enough traffic.
Well traveled, yeah, I got you. Okay, that was just my question.
All right, thank you. Okay, roll call.
Councilmember Schroeder. Each.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Dalby.
Item 5, I need a
Yes, sir, that one.
motion on a resolution approving a final plat for Laura Timbers Ridge subdivision.
Reg, second.
Thank you.
I forgot about this. Pat Daniels has submitted a subdivision request on behalf of TS Investments LLC for land located outside of the city. And current property is a vacant aliquot parcel located in northwest city limits. The proposed split would create 4 buildable properties for single family development. The proposed subdivision plat is shown here. Hoover Street is the road that fronts on the south side of that development, and 110th Avenue is on the west side. And again, it does include 4 lots proposed for future single-family residential. A 5th lot, Lot A, is also shown on the plat for future road right-of-way dedication. This is along 110th. Currently, I think 110th is got 66 feet of right-of-way total. And we're asking for additional right of way on that in case the city does ever annex into this area and does need to upgrade the quality of road. And there's also a 50-foot flow easement is shown on the alongside the existing creek on it. When we look at this, thank you very much. One thing that we're looking at is our comprehensive plan to make sure that it does meet our comprehensive plan. This is in a high growth priority area. However, it is also located in what's considered an agricultural area. So those agricultural areas do allow for those larger lot sizes that the subdivision's plat showing. So this particular request does conform to our comprehensive plan. With that, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Probably if it, that ever would come into the city, we came back up one slide there. Could those lots be then further subdivided if it ever moved into the city?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's completely possible. Now, one thing we don't know right now is exactly where the houses are going to be placed, and sometimes that can make a little bit of effort. But then if you also go back on this one right here, there is a lot of topography within that parcel that's probably going to make it somewhat difficult to develop in the future anyways. That was one thing the Planning and Zoning Commission did note too, is you're probably getting highest and best use out of this parcel just based off the topography and the streams that are in there.
Well, the only thing I remember a league presentation a number of years ago where they were talking about as you annex property into the city, that homes that are on large lots tend to take more services than they can pay for, so.
And it is, honestly, it's one thing that we always look at, and this area is a little bit weird. One thing we talk with the Planning and Zoning Commission is that we do have agricultural classifications on the north side of Hoover. High growth priority area, which doesn't really match up. So that's one thing that we're probably going to be looking at in the future is maybe redesignating some of that land, especially in our growth priority areas, get more dense uses in there.
That's the corner of the road that takes you to the.
Put me on the spot here. Yes, I'm looking around to people that would know more than me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they're meeting all the guidelines. My concern is I guess. One person, but I guess my vision of where Indianola is going, that's that area, that's that corner of that whole part of town that I think could, and I guess concern would be is Hoover Street could be two things. It could be a commercial, get you from east to west.
It will be a connector, but 65 and.
Yeah, exactly, especially when we extend streets.
Well, if they're gonna look at that as future development there, I guess. Choice here, we do, but I guess my thinking is if you guys look at it, make some recommendations, I'd be receptive.
Well, I think I have an issue with this. I just, like I said, that's my only concern is if this starts all of a sudden starting to happen down along Hoover, I want to really take a serious look at that, or I encourage council to take a serious look at it because we don't want to allow things that are going to bite us in the next 15 years, in my opinion.
Yep.
Right. You. Jackie, would you call the roll?
Member Dalby?
Aye.
Schroeder?
Aye.
Beach?
Aye.
Richardson?
Aye.
Parker?
Aye.
Right, we'll move on to item 6 and Ben will be giving a presentation.
For the screen to come up here, great. Great. Wonderful. Well, this is exciting. This is something we've been working towards and something that we're excited to share with the city of Indianola. It's not. But with that said, we want to create expectations and clearly establish expectations that we have. We're really kind of showing the vision of the community over the very long term. And several of these projects will take time to develop. It'll require a lot of community involvement in those and the development of these and several votes along the way with the residents establishing whether they want us to go in this direction or not. But for the purposes of this evening, what's on the agenda is the property acquisition of 118 East Salem. Give some disclaimers because you can't have a good presentation without just having plenty of legal disclaimers. This is just a conceptual idea. This is not professionally rendered in any way by an architect. This is the very initial stages of us sharing this vision with our community. No timelines established at this point, other than the action that's on the agenda this evening for the council to consider. We will need additional support from the community in order to construct a new public safety building in City Hall at some point. None of these ideas are set in stone. We're very open-minded in seeking community engagement throughout this entire process to ensure that we are meeting the expectations of the residents. And this process or project or these series of projects will take proceed. So with that said, prior to my time coming in with the city of Indianola, a process had been begun to meet the community's needs when it came to the facilities that our community really needs for today and for the future to take care of our needs, our library, our city hall facilities, and for our community to continue to grow. We also look to have community gathering spaces. And yet, analysis that was completed for the projects that you see before you was completed during COVID. So the community engagement process was somewhat limited. And so some of the renderings and whatnot really don't, I think, what the intent of our council and our public was really looking for. We also were looking at things that could be impactful to the neighborhood. Yet the renderings was only a very small sliver. And I want to make that very clear that the majority of the cost that went into the initial design was really needs analysis and what our community needs going forward and how much office space is required and how much space for our fire department and police department and all that type of thing. So those were dollars well spent, and it really has helped lead us to where we are today. I think the meeting before I came was a little bit of a opportunity for the council to express their feelings and let the air be cleared a little bit. And
Nice way to say it. You're so positive.
in order to get rid of the smog, you need, or what we call an inversion, you need a good storm. A good storm blows away the inversion, right? And the council's been getting along better than I've been. So this is now. Ultimately, one of the concerns that really came up during that time was that this is actually was envisioned as one project, but it really had to be two projects pursuant to state code because of the fact that they were on two different parcels and therefore would require two different votes. This caused some concern. Obviously, this was voted up 3 for the public safety building and down 3 for the public safety building and up 3 for the library and down 3 for the library. And it really had, it was indicative of the fact that we all needed to take the opportunity to have a pause and to address what the concerns of the community really were so that we could all get on board. You know, having a divergence of thought is not a bad thing. It helps us to make better decisions. And this was truly illustrated tonight as we had a lot of really great debate, a lot of 4-1 votes going back and forth, and that's healthy. That helps us to make better choices. Some of the concerns that were expressed by the community is the city hall location. By having the city hall proposed to be in the library, it felt very impactful to the neighborhood, the residential neighborhood right there, especially with the limited land that was available. Bringing City Hall back into the public safety building seemed the more logical way to keep it in the downtown area. The other great concern that I've heard over and over again since I've been hired on is that we are limiting parking where we need more parking for our businesses and more green space. With the new County Justice Center, a lot of the green space and the trees were lost that were once there. The other message we heard loud and clear is that the architecture of a new city facility really should match the architecture of our community. And the modern looks of buildings that were proposed really did not fit with the architecture of our area. We also wanted to make sure that the costs were appropriate. We wanted to make sure that if we needed to do things, we could phase it. Myself coming in from a different state, I was a little concerned that it didn't have a basement. I thought a basement in tornado country was probably a very healthy thing as far as emergency operations center in a public safety building. And then, of course, we wanted to make sure that all of our council was represented and that their constituents were represented by having both the old council and the new council members all really on the same page. So we took a pause, a step back to really talk about what could we do a little bit differently, meet the needs of our community and downtown business district. And so this is just an overhead view of the existing City Hall property. You can see that our house here a little bit. You can see that we have some beautiful green space here. I think our Parks and Recreation Department does an exceptional job making this beautiful. We have the Tree of Life out here. We have parking that's close to Jefferson. But on my very first day during my interview, I was waiting in between sessions for my wife to come back and pick me up. And I spent a goodly amount of time sitting here watching no one utilize this park ever. And it's really because it's so close to Jefferson, it's really loud. And even though it's beautiful and it's a great landscaping feature, it really wasn't usable for parents who might want to have their kids out there or anything like that. Our City Hall is right here. Of course, our square is over here and the County Justice Center is just outside of that configuration. And the real question is, how do we bring some of that green space and that parking closer to the square? Some of the objectives, the key objectives we really want to try to accomplish in this process is keep the public safety building downtown. That creates vibrancy. From our staff perspective, we go over, we get lunch, and we solicit the businesses in town. Having a downtown presence for our city hall is really important. We also needed to find temporary locations of office space for our city personnel. When we start constructing a new city hall, we have to dismantle parts of these buildings, and we need to have a place for our city staff to go, at least part of that. The vision is that our fire department would be able to stay while we build a fire department in this area, but the rest of the city staff may need to relocate. We wanted to make sure that we move City Hall from the proposed library into the public safety building. We wanted to relocate the parking, the green space closer to the square, and have a net positive in parking for the square itself. We wanted to preserve the historic look and feel of our community by having a historic architecture for our building. We wanted to enhance the downtown development. And so it became very apparent that we wanted to move that space closer to the west. And that really opened up the idea and the thought process of potentially acquiring more property so that we could reconfigure City Hall a little bit differently. That started with the discussion of the parking lot itself that the city currently has under lease. And that quickly evolved into the discussion with the same property owner that owns the Regions Bank building, which is also occupied by Optima and arguably it's the least aesthetically pleasing things on the square. Is that a politically correct way to say that? These are the ones that don't necessarily match the architecture of the rest of the square. It has that 60s and 70s look about it. And it's clear that those buildings are a little bit of disrepair. And yet they are usable, something that the city could utilize for some of the space that we've already talked about. So additional land provides a lot of answers to the city. And it's important to note that I've already had discussions with all three of the tenants there and had a very warm reception by all three and very open to the idea of working with the city to potentially relocate time. So what does this property really mean for the city? Well, what it means is that we would have a location for our temporary city hall and potentially our police department that could relocate to this area during the period of construction on the new city facility. There's also the discussion of what is the potential of this property over the long term? What is the after construction opportunities for the use of green space and additional parking that could be brought to the square? Of course, those are two separate projects. We want to make that very clear. It's two different considerations by our community as we move forward. And the second consideration could not be entertained until after the first consideration is complete, meaning construction on a new city hall, public safety building is done. So 5 to 7 years from now, it could be the potential of this property and how could it benefit our downtown community. One of the fundamental aspects of any good community is to have a healthy and vibrant downtown. This is what's called a three-dimensional map of the Des Moines area. And it shows the vibrancy and the per square foot benefit of taxes that are generated within a downtown area and how those taxes can be utilized to help benefit the rest of the county and the rest of the region. A little video on that.
Nicozy, I'm the director of Urban 3 based in Nashville, North Carolina. We help cities look at land use, urban design, and economics so they can see how they're doing financially and what they can be doing better. But we consistently find that municipalities and their counties perform better when they invest their dollars in urban mixed-use development instead of other forms. Think of a company that consumes raw material, adds some labor and know-how, creates a product. This company will need to know the cost of their materials, their labor, revenue, and the ultimate market value of the product in order to see whether they will be successful or not. Cities are actually quite similar. Their raw material is a finite resource, the land within their borders, and their product is their tax base, which is what they need to survive. We've looked at cities all over the country, and when you do the math, it's easy to see that dense downtown development returns a greater investment to the community than putting tax dollars. Let's look at some examples. My house sits on 1/10 of an acre lot. Our municipal property taxes are about $1,100 or about $11,000 an acre. This big box retailer sits on 34 acre lot. Total property taxes are a whopping $221,000 a year, which equates to about $6,500 an acre net to the city. Taking the city's portion of property taxes and adding the estimated retail taxes, it equals $54,000 in total tax production per acre. That seems like a lot until we compare it to a building downtown. This boarded up department store was converted into a mixed use building site that includes retail, office, and residential space. So where does this mixed use building come in? The city nets a considerable $330,000 property taxes per acre. Add to it the estimated $83,000 in retail taxes per acre, which bring the total to the city to $413,000 per acre. That's more than 7.5 times the productivity of the site. Even looking at jobs, the big box store produces about 6 jobs per acre, while our mixed use building comes in at 74 jobs per acre. And let's not forget the downtown building also contains 90 residential units per acre. Those residents are working and shopping and creating additional economic activity. The big box store has 0 residential units. But remember, most companies need to count more than raw material costs. They also need to account for the labor, management, and know-how. This is the investment they make in turning raw materials into finished product. Cities are the same. In order to turn land into tax base, they have to add a special something called infrastructure. At a minimum, cities add value to their land by providing streets, utility service, police protection, fire protection. The more spread out a city becomes, the more expensive it is to deliver those services, especially when that acre of land pays less per acre. Unfortunately, when cities consider new developments, too often they focus on taxes that they hope will flow to the city coffers without adequately considering the land base they will use up or the costs they will incur. In city after city, big and small, when we do the math, it's clear that dense downtown development is much more productive than anything else in the community. Downtown development is the golden goose of urban economics, and it's the best bet for cities that want to prosper in development.
So ultimately, this is that same tax map for the city of Des Moines. You can see how it has grown over time as more and more investment has come into the Des Moines metro area. And it's really important to note that what's good for the city is actually extremely good for the county. As we look at lost dollars, those lost dollars not only come to the city, they come to the county. We look at property taxes, those property tax dollars come not only to the city, they come to the county. And those county dollars can be used throughout the entire county area when it comes to taking care of roads or providing essential services out to the county as well. So it's really incumbent upon municipalities and governments to work together to try to create that vibrancy in our community. And that's really comes down to how do we create a vibrant downtown or enhance the business district we already have. And this idea of a downtown green space really came from what's called the Green, a simple, small little park that's right outside the Charlotte, North Carolina Convention Center. I went to a ICMA City Managers Conference down there. And this was the little park that was right outside the convention center and led to the hotel area. It's just a simple little park that had a theme on reading and had poems and books and little sculptures and art creation throughout it. But it just created a great place to have an ice cream cone, grab a cup of coffee, or do whatever it is that you would enjoy in a downtown area. And that's really what we've lost on the square. How do we restore that to the square? This is the question that we really have. What is the possibilities of this land in the future? And how could that potentially be redeveloped into a more green area or additional parking? And ultimately, what we really want to do is create a community gathering space, a place for people to come together, a place for people to call home. And that is really what is done. That type of an element to it can be enhanced with public art, murals like we have in our community today, and also be turned into a green space. So one of the thought processes is that we relocate the Tree of Life that's closer to Jefferson Way and bring it out closer to the square, that we open up a green area. And ironically, the County Justice Center, when it was built, had the steps located right there facing to the east, which was designed such that it could be used for concerts and venues, except there's really no location out here other than the street to enjoy those. And so you need to shut down the street every time. This would lend itself to being a beautiful green space area that leads from the new city hall to the county justice building and tying the two together. Also, it enhanced the parking. Again, this is just me playing the PowerPoint and what it could mean as far as green space is concerned. Adding to that, of course, we are utilizing the Justice Center now. We are utilizing it for the Christmas program that we had not too long ago. And it was beautiful. It was great to see everybody come out. It was great to see the carolers and great to see that venue being used. It's something that could be that could enhance our community even more. Another aspect is, or a different possibility and option too, is to potentially build an atrium. And that's what you really see in cities like Boston or others, where you have kind of almost like a glass pavilion where the sides can be opened up in the summer and you can cover the top in the summer and have a shaded area away from the sun. But in the winter months, you can open up and remove the shades from the top, seal up the sides, and have almost a greenhouse effect and a nice warm place to enjoy, again, your ice cream cone or a cup of coffee or whatever have you. It ties the two facilities together. But you can see here, I have, this is very visionary. This is very far out. Again, something that would need to be considered by both the city as well as the county as well. And that is the potential of having additional parking space in this area. How would you accomplish that? You don't necessarily want to build a parking structure that blocks or inhibits or comes up to the square. You don't want to hide the square behind any kind of parking structure. But you could potentially go down, thereby having the green space that draws you into the square, but having additional net positive parking in the square. Of course, that second option with the pavilion is just kind of illustrated there as well. So what could an underground parking facility look like? A simple in, simple out, one way, angled parking so that you could maximize the parking spots and not make it difficult to pull in and pull out. With a simple counter of the number of spaces available. This could be designated for city and county employees and provide a solution to the number of county employees that are currently parking on the square, as well as provide benefit for our new facility as well and taking care of our own staff. But we also believe that this type of a structure would be heavily utilized by our seniors in the winter for sure, when they're visiting the restaurants in the area, get their car out of the sun, get their car out of the snow. Be a very beneficial area. But again, that is the visionary aspect. What does that really do for us in the short term? Short term, we have to focus on the primary objective, which is to meet our public safety needs by providing space for our firefighters, for our police officers, and for our city staff to operate. What we're really seeing here with the potential city hall is pushing city hall closer to Jefferson. We really don't absolutely need parking closer to Jefferson. And that's mostly because we have the benefit of IMU. IMU is our utility service provider, and when they're paying their bills, they go to IMU. They don't necessarily come into City Hall. Meetings. And those who come for community development purposes or for their public safety needs. And so we can limit parking out here, put City Hall further to the east, and provide the spots, the space that we need for a public safety facility. I've kind of reconfigured this a little bit from what the council has seen previously, but basically this is the size of the Norwalk Fire Department right here. I wanted to kind of plop that in just so you could see. One of the concerns of our firefighters is that they currently have to back in their fire trucks every single time, and that's hazardous not only to the building, but to the equipment that we have. And one of the concerns of our firefighters, they want to be able to pull in back and in emergency situations, pull out and have immediate access. When you're looking at this, the green space and whatnot, I probably should have talked about the colored A's there are really public art. Different opportunities for public art can be put in all the way throughout here as well. And then the greenery as far as trees are concerned. So this is the first floor, the main floor of the facility, and provides for administration for our fire department as well as the apparatus, and administration for the police department as well as foyer space with conference room space for our residents and our business owners to be able to tap into and utilize. This envisions having a basement, which is really important in Iowa, and that is where our police officers can have underground parking for their vehicles. They can bring in those who they want to interview in interrogation rooms down there. They can have their evidence storage, a small gun range, so that they can be fully trained. And then several training rooms in addition to an emergency operations center. We need larger spaces for our entire departments to come together, both our fire and our police, and they do need to be separate because they do have different things going on at the exact same time. But then our police department needs separate training room so that they can throw each other on the floor that bounce back up, so that they can take on the grannies next year. This also envisions an upper floor to a city hall that would allow for space for the council to meet, a conference room for the mayor and council, as well as space for our community development and administrative departments. Ultimately, we want to make sure that a future city hall would have that look and feel of the city of Indianola. Therefore, we would want to have brick and limestone architecture that matches Simpson College, matches the county administration building, Methodist Church, and all the areas that of our community really tie in the look and feel. Not only the brick and limestone architecture, but the window treatments that we have that's so unique to the Indianola Square. I threw up there the Carnegie Library, which is now the Opera House, because in all reality, the Carnegie Library is the perfect balance between the traditional in the front and the modern in the back. And that's really what we're looking at here today, with a traditional city hall in the front and a modern county justice center in the back, tied together by the greenery and green space and the art too. And this is just kind of my best attempt at trying to render something in PowerPoint with limited skill set before this potentially gets handed off to architects to do a more professional job. And on this little bit of a structure, not only does it envision the basement upper floor, but typically your city halls have some kind of a dome. I had several different domes that I put up there that looked kind of different shape and look and whatnot. Somebody had suggested to me, you know, you ought to make our dome look like our hot air balloon rising. So that was just my attempt to try to make a hot air balloon rising. Somebody else took that idea and said, you know, you ought to make that element really come through City Hall and have your foyer be look like the interior of a hot air balloon as well. That could lead to really being inviting atmosphere for the public to come in those front doors, to be able to see interpretive signs and information about the Opera House, about the National Balloon Classic, about Simpson College and the Warren County Fair and all the different great things that we have to offer, and leads right into the green space and then to the square and invites everybody to come to shop. So we're really looking at 3 different projects. Pressing, the one we're really focusing on tonight is the acquisition of land in support of the public safety building. But we also are working on acquisition of land for the expansion of our library as well. We have acquired 1 home and we're in negotiations on another. And then our long-term is the future and green space of the parking. Again, I want to come back and set expectations. This isn't going to happen overnight. This is going to be a very long-term vision and require a lot of support. I want to do it in a cost-controlled and phased approach. When I came to Iowa, one of the things that was strange for me is the concept and the idea of coming to the community and saying, okay, here's a vision, give us money, and then we'll hopefully you get what you're asking for, as opposed to the mindset of where I came from, which is you buy the land first, you work on the design, you get to the design so that the community then can see the rendering, really know what they're paying for. And when they go to the ballot box, they can vote and have confidence that they're going to get what they are purchasing with their vote. That's really what's before the council tonight. It's the very first of many dominoes that need to fall. That is the land acquisition. We've been working on this probably 9 months now, working on the acquisition of this land and dealing with the current property owner and their family, and they've been nothing but wonderful and gracious to work with. But this land acquisition is step 1. We also need to then open up the opportunity for community engagement, to have conceptual and design, to bring contractors on board through that conceptual design process, eventually have voter approval, get full design, and then relocate staff and have construction. That's just the public safety building portion. Working years ahead. But what's up before the council tonight for their consideration, we want you to not really have the big picture of why the direction they are, is 4 steps. The first one is a reimbursement resolution. It's envisioned that the council is actually borrowing money from it on the land acquisition. That becomes a little bit difficult. You know, Andy's gone a little bit more gray with me asking to try to make all this work, and I appreciate Andy and Jackie and all the staff trying to come together. But this is envisioning that we're borrowing money from ourselves to make this acquisition. That we have a funding allocation resolution so that we can free up some of those dollars. 6C is the actual agreement, the purchase agreement that's finally been negotiated and before the council for their consideration. And then the council has the opportunity to discuss and give direction with regard to conceptual design and how we want to. Council, public, have any?
I think this is really exciting. Put a lot of work into this. Nice.
I think our Microsoft skills crap out of mine.
Just wait until Jason looks at other opportunities.
All right, if no other questions, we'll move on to item A. I need a first and second motion on a resolution declaring an official intent under the Treasury Regulation 1.15-2, I vote -2, to issue debt to reimburse the city for certain original expenditures paid in connection with specific projects and repayment of original funds borrowed. Okay. You, any other discussion?
Just have one thing, Christine had to leave for an emergency, so.
Okay. Jackie?
Councilmember Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Item B, I need a first and second motion on a resolution authorizing transfer of surplus funds from the Indianola Stormwater Utility Fund to the Indianola Real Property Improvement Fund.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Jackie?
Councilmember Schroeder,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Dalby.
Aye.
Item C, I need a first and second motion on a resolution approving a purchase agreement.
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion? Jackie?
Councilmember Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Item D, discussion and direction regarding architectural services. Ben, do you have a opinion on this or an idea, thought?
What's really other than our previous renderings of the work that have been done with a combination between OPN, who is our architect, and Formation Group, who is our advocate for our architect, representing the city to the architect. They have done a great job in the work that they did to do our needs analysis, and they very well could do a great job taking this new vision. That I think what we're really doing is trying to become better customers, trying to create the vision to give to them to be able to do the work. So we could continue to go in the direction that we have and historically in the past, or we can, since it is such a brand new and fresh look at how we want to move forward, we could go through an RFQ process for qualifications and open that up to architects that perhaps are following a methodology that we've looked at as a council and as a staff, which is the construction manager at risk. Being able to look at new opportunities to try to establish a budget and live within that budget a little bit differently under that new methodology allowed by the. So it's really an opportunity for you to set direction for us and how we should proceed with the next steps.
Having spent much time in this industry and working with architects, I would tell you OPN is one of the best. I mean, we were really happy to have had them bid on that and or provide a RFQ before. I would tell you that probably any of the architecture firms in the Des Moines metro area are all doing the new, with the opportunity to be able to do it that way. And I know OPN does as well. So my recommendation would be that we continue on with what OPN. I mean, they basically were going with the direction that really is council at the time we're giving them. So yes, I don't have any qualms about what what their qualifications are and their abilities. Because, like I said, I've worked on a number of projects that they design really nice buildings. So I have full faith that yeah, that's one of them right there. I mean, they've been in, and I think they've done some stuff with our schools and I worked with them. I believe Pleasant Hill's new public safety building was
I
done.
think it makes sense too, because they've done some work. Assessment.
Our staff, they,
You know, what our needs are.
Do we need to keep those groups on?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, I mean, Formation kind of, they were the initial contact for the needs assessment. And then at that point, then we're brought the architects in at that point, so.
The only play devil's advocate here for a minute and listen, I worked with OPN and Envision and Sorry Battery and FDPA and everybody in the city of Des Moines with different projects. BNIM and everybody, but I just, sometimes you get a vision by what the concept was. The one thing, John, I don't disagree with you, they've done great work, so don't get me wrong, but when we were down here in that meeting, they just kind of kept shifting their design around, and I don't think they've had a vision, but you're so correct. We really haven't been good partners in telling them really what we want. And so that's really something that I think we have to do as owners. We have to tell them what we want and what it has to look like and what we think that should happen. And it's not something that they can pull out of their great design. And this is going to be our marquee project. It's going to be a marquee project, but it's going to be based on our design, not their concept. So if we can go that direction, I guess I don't have any problem either. Only thing is would like to get some information on maybe you guys had this, John, I don't know, and Glenn, but maybe more information on how they would then work with us. And we kind of had a little bit of that, but how they'd work with us to get the public sold on a bond issue.
Yeah, and they had all that. I mean, we were just gearing up for that whole part of it. And I would say to be fair to them, to be honest with you, the way we were working on our process was more to plan the needs assessment, the whole design was nothing more than here's the spaces that we need. And it was really more of let's get it taken care of, get it moving forward. Then we'll come back to the public with what our concepts of the full design would be. So to hold that against them, I think would be wrong, because that wasn't there. Those weren't even, in my opinion, those weren't even concepts of the direction we were going. It was, this is what could be, because we had to show the public something wasn't the final product. And
I get that. I'm with you on that too. I guess I would also like to know also, have they worked at all with a construction manager at risk? And that's a fairly new concept. And I really
would say yes.
Yeah. I guess I'd just like to know that for sure. We're going to try to make it. I know, are we making a decision and I know what direction we're
You're
going?
just providing general direction. I can certainly.
But ask that question of them.
Yeah. I can certainly go to OPN and say, we'd like to revise, have you give us a new proposal. Starting work that you've done before, taking this new vision and give us an estimate on the pre-built expenditure and the post full design cost.
Right.
And whether or not, and to share their experience with regard to seeing their construction manager.
I think the construction manager at risk, and this is what the public needs to know though, with construction manager at risk, we will be at a guaranteed maximum. There will not be money spent over that. And so we need to have an architect that's going to be able to work with.
So we choose to spend money over that.
Well,
That's what it comes back to. There comes up things along the way. Generally, you're engineering down, that's the whole idea.
Yeah, you have three aspects of a project: time, cost, and scope. And it's a scope that's flexible unless you want to add money to it to increase the scope.
And please, Steve brought it up. He's asked them about what their plan was for how we were going to mark. I mean, they had a full blown. I mean, they're very good at that. They'll work with you, hand in hand to get it through as far as the marketing and the sales pitch to the community.
Well, I know they've done a lot of school projects, and that's that they've helped schools do that too. I have no doubt about that. I just want to make sure that I had that plan, and I know you did.
Yeah, we did.
So I also want to ask a question about construction management.
We can certainly invite them into a council meeting.
Well, I also want to say, I think it's extremely important for the department heads and yourself to be comfortable with this, because you're the ones that are sitting in all those meetings and working on the day to day. So we want to make sure you guys are comfortable as well too. And
I actually, Gia, and I'm saying the right one this time. Staff, so that we can start sitting down with each, I've already had the opportunity to sit down with the police officers already because we were going through the hiring process, but now to sit down with firefighters and really get their vision and make some excitement about this. And I think that's going to be great for recruitment and great for, what bodes well for our community.
all right. We will move on to other business, unless there's any other comments on that.
Where we are.
All right. City managers report.
Make it really quick because I know it's been a long night, but I just want to say that there's been a ton of meetings going on with YMCA and the conversion of the city resource and city facility. Certainly want to express my appreciation to the staff for all of their work in making that come to fruition. Each one of the departments have been meeting with Heather, and Heather's just been phenomenal in making that go as smoothly as possible. But not only that, our staff is busy. We're doing exceptionally good with our police department and community engagement that we've been doing. Our fire department got a great response this week, even though they were stretched thin. And for all of our resources were out of town, they still responded for the fire needs for our community. Our community development department, all the different projects that are coming on, and streets and sewer. I think one of our departments is actually working at top capacity right now with all of the different projects, and that really can't go on without saying our Parks and Recreation department, which is really coming up full speed with all the different events and venues and everything that they do, and the beautiful flowers that they provide for our entire community. So thanks to all of them, and thanks to our volunteers out there. That's
I would add the library would be.
And the library, absolutely.
She's got some great things coming up with some of the great programs scheduled.
The kickoff on the event was approved by the council tonight.
Okay. Motion to second.
I guess.
All in favor, say aye.
Right.
All right, we are adjourned.